Chapter 458. Mo Tianji thought for a while. Then, he made a prompt decision and said, "All right. Now that the clan is in crisis, Mo Tianyun has mortgaged a small part of his property. If Mo Tianyun wins, I must immediately take action and take down Mo Tianyun. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for me to move forward if Mo Tianyun relies on his strong financial resources to develop his strength. If Mo Tianyun were to lose, it would be a heaven-sent opportunity for Mo Tianji. I will settle accounts with your Mo clan sooner or later." Chu Yang looked coldly at Mo Tianji. He then said gloomily, "I wouldn't care if Little Wu was well and loved. But, your Mo clan has mistreated Little Wu. So, I might as well tell you this. Whether it's you or Mo Tianyun who will be in power in the future, I will take back what I owe Little Wu. No one in the entire heavens can take advantage of me without paying a price if I, Chu Yang, don't want to." Chu Yang said heavily. Then, he didn't wait for Mo Tianji to reply. He strode out and said, "I'm going to look for Duke Yu. I'll go with you." Mo Tianji's face turned red as he followed Chu Yang. He had never been scolded in such an embarrassing manner. However, Mo Tianji had no choice but to swallow it. "Who told your clan to be so useless and heartless? You guys don't need to go. Seize the time to cultivate. We can't afford to lose tomorrow's battle," Chu Yang said to Jiyu Duxing and the others who had followed him. Jiyu Duxing nodded. He took his brothers back to continue their training. "Brother Chu, why are you so good to my younger sister?" Mo Tianji could see that Chu Yang was much more attentive to Mo Qingwu than to her elder brother. "I like Qingwu very much," Chu Yang replied vaguely. "But, you like her too much," Mo Tianji muttered in his heart. But, he didn't dare to say it out loud. Chu Yang naturally didn't dare to let him know that he liked his younger sister. He wanted to wait for her to grow up so that he could marry her. Mo Tianji would fight him to the death if that happened. "Yi Yi is as beastly as Meng Luo, don't worry. I will clean up the evil tendencies in the Mo clan bit by bit if I have the power." Mo Tianji sighed and said, "Brother Mo, I have something to say. But, I don't know if I should say it or not." Chu Yang said as he walked. "Please speak. Setting your sights on only one clan is a bit limiting. Moreover, it's not flexible enough," Chu Yang said in a careful manner. "How could I not know?" Mo Tianji let out a long sigh. "Mo Tianyun and I were fighting for power. Could it be that I, Mo Tianji, was fighting for the position of the clan lord? I, Mo Tianji, have deep feelings for my clan." He couldn't bear to see his clan fall at the hands of Mo Tianyun. Mo Tianyun is narrow-minded. He is vicious and merciless. He will do anything to achieve his goals. The Mo clan cannot fall into his hand. He took a deep breath and said, "I want to bring my clan and charge into the upper three heavens. Fulfill the wish of the Mo clan's ancestors for dozens of generations." Chu Yang remained silent. He sped up and said, "I wish you success." The two of them hurriedly rushed forward, and soon arrived at the place where Duke Yu was. "Brother Yu, Chu Yang has come to visit. Please come out and meet me," Chu Yang shouted. His voice spread far and wide. Inside, Mo Qingwu jumped up and danced in the air, its elder brother Chu Yang. This voice would appear in her dreams almost every night. It would always gently comfort her. "Xiao Wu, don't be afraid. Xiao Wu, you have me. Xiao Wu." Now, she had finally heard it. Mo Qingwu jumped up and cheered. Then, she fell down, and suddenly became startled. She pricked up her small ears, and nervously listened to the outside. She suddenly grabbed Jun Lulu's hand and anxiously said, "Elder sister Alu, did I hear wrong? Someone was really shouting, right? That was elder brother Chu Yang's voice, right? I wasn't dreaming, right?" Jun Lulu held back her laughter and said, "I didn't hear it." Mo Qingwu hung her head dejectedly. She sat down on the ground and said, "Am I really dreaming?" Jun Shiju's voice resounded, "Ah Lu, you look after this little girl. I will take a look at this king of Hell Chu." Mo Qingwu was startled. Then, she became ecstatic. So, it wasn't a dream. She got up, and was about to rush out. But, Jun Lulu didn't manage to grab her. She saw that this little girl had reached the door, and had quickly turned around and ran back. She plunged her head in front of the mirror, and anxiously looked left and right. Then, she turned around and rushed out again. Jun Lulu's eyes were sharp, and her hands were quick. She held her and whispered, "Don't worry. Let your elder brother Chu Yang and elder sister talk business first. Then, I will give you to your elder brother Chu Yang." Mo Qingwu's eyes were filled with tears. She revealed an intensely unwilling look. But, she eventually nodded in a well-behaved manner. "I want to listen." Jun Lulu repeatedly agreed, "Okay, okay. As long as you don't make any noise." Mo Qingwu silently nodded. Then, she lowered her head. Her eyes were already red. After the ecstasy passed, she only felt boundless grievances bubbling up in her heart. "I want to tell elder brother Chu Yang about everything. I've suffered too much in the past year." "Boo-hoo." The sound of footsteps came from outside. Chu Yang shouted. Then, he saw someone come out and invite him in. He walked inside without thinking. Mo Tianji also wanted to follow him. But, he was stopped by an imperial guard. The guard said, "Minister Jun only wants to see Minister Chu." Mo Tianji was helpless. He had no choice but to wait outside. Chu Yang walked in, and saw a black-clothed woman. She was standing in the room with her back towards him. Her hair was like a cloud of mist, and her figure was graceful. She was wearing ordinary black clothes. But, it gave people a feeling that she was in the clouds. It seemed as if she was an ethereal immortal. She was riding the clouds and riding the wind. "Your Excellency is..." Chu Yang's pupils shrank. He faintly guessed, "Minister Jun, right? Minister Chu has good eyesight." Jun Shizhu slowly turned around. Her sharp eyes looked at Chu Yang's face. Chu Yang felt as if a steel needle had fiercely pierced his face twice. Jun Shizhu's face was covered with a black veil. So, it couldn't be seen what she looked like. But, her eyes were like bright stars in the night sky. So, people couldn't look at her directly. "Minister Chu must have come for Mo Qingwu," Jun Shizhu insipidly said. Chu Yang's mind shivered. He said, "Yes. Mo Tianji must have gone to ask for help." Jun Shizhu smiled. "Yes," Chu Yang calmly admitted. "Sure enough. I deliberately made things difficult for Mo Tianji because I wanted Minister Chu to come here for a chat." Jun Shizhu's voice contained a cold smile as she said, "I would have given you too much face if I had come to pay you a visit. So, I had no choice but to resort to this plan. Minister Chu, please don't take offense." Chu Yang smiled. "Minister Jun is an expert of this generation. You're a senior expert. You have a high position and power. You're the overlord of this generation. So, Chu Yang should have come to pay a visit to you." Jun Shizhu had unleashed her imposing aura when Chu Yang had come in. She had turned around, and created an aura of a monarch overlooking the world. And, this aura had shrouded Chu Yang. At the same time, she had been carefully observing Chu Yang's expression, voice, eyes, and even the movements of his muscles. However, she had discovered that Chu Yang hadn't changed in the slightest. He was the same as he had been when he had come in. He was neither arrogant nor overbearing. In fact, even his pulse hadn't changed. It was rare to see such a young man with such willpower among the heroes of the world. Jun Shizhu's eyes slightly flashed with a mysterious light. She thought, "No wonder little Yu values him so much. This young man is really extraordinary." "Minister Jun, there's no harm in speaking your mind," Chu Yang said. "Minister Chu, what do you think of my dark bamboo?" Jun Shizhu pondered for a moment. Then, she suddenly asked. "Dark bamboo dominates the upper three heavens. So, it's naturally a first-class force." Chu Yang pondered for a moment and said, "Such a force is enough to dominate a region even in the upper three heavens. It's a pity that there are few top-notch experts. Otherwise, dark bamboo wouldn't have been the ruler of the upper three heavens. It would have been a veritable overlord of the upper three heavens. It's a pity that there are few top-notch experts." Jun Shizhu slowly repeated. Her eyes exposed a smiling expression. "That's good. I can return Mo Qingwu to you." Jun Shizhu didn't beat around the bush and said, "But, I want Minister Chu to promise me something. Or, give me a promise." I never make any promises, Chu Yang insipidly said. I never make promises to anyone or anything. He looked at Jun Shizhu with a serious expression and said, Minister Jun must be aware that the so-called promises are only used for betrayal. I don't want to break my promise to anyone. A promise is too heavy for me. The look of appreciation in Jun Shizhu's eyes became even more intense. She said, that's good. Then, you don't have to promise me anything. But, Minister Chu, you have to promise me something at an appropriate time in the future. How about it? She smiled and said, it's a request that won't embarrass you. Chu Yang pondered. Jun Shizhu's words were simple. But, could it be that the dark bamboo's request was simple? Minister Chu has just arrived here. So, you can't contend with a big clan yet. In exchange, I, Jun Shizhu, can guarantee that no one will snatch Mo Qingwu away from you. Jun Shizhu smiled and stated her condition. All right. Chu Yang made a prompt decision and agreed. This was the most troublesome matter for him at present. It's a deal. Even a galloping horse can't catch up. Both of them looked at each other and smiled. Jun Shizhu felt relieved in her heart. This way, we'll have an opportunity to turn things around when that peerless master arrives. Moreover, there's still some time left. Chu Yang will be entangled with many things during this period of time. He will be in constant trouble. Moreover, his ambition will be very big. So, why would she worry about her relationship with Chu Yang? Jun Shizhu hadn't thought that the peerless master she had imagined was standing in front of her at this moment. Jun Shizhu gently smiled. Then, her body fluttered like a wisp of black smoke, and disappeared from Chu Yang's sight. Jun Lu gently released Mo Qingwu from behind the curtain, and quietly disappeared. Then, a voice that had been suppressed for a long time suddenly burst out, Brother Chu Yang. Her voice was so loud that it almost broke her throat. Qingwu. Chu Yang's entire body shook. He suddenly turned his head in pleasant surprise. He saw a petite figure rushing towards him as if her life depended on it. When she was halfway there, she suddenly flew up and pounced towards him. Chu Yang subconsciously opened his arms. His eyes couldn't help but turn red. He felt a burst of fragrant wind in his arms. Then, a soft body wrapped itself around his body like an octopus. Mo Qingwu firmly stuffed her small head into his bosom. She felt happy, sad, and satisfied at the same time. She flattened her small mouth, and her voice had already changed. Brother Chu Yang, you've finally come, boo-hoo. She burst into tears before she could finish speaking. She opened her small nose, and greedily breathed in Chu Yang's scent. She suddenly felt so happy that she wanted to cry. She felt so happy that her heart ached. How long have I been looking forward to this embrace? How many times have I dreamed of it? Chu Yang held her tightly, and couldn't speak. Only his heart was beating intensely. Little Wu, Qingwu, I've come. I won't let you suffer any grievances. My Qingwu. Chapter 459. Qingwu. Chu Yang hugged this soft body tightly. His voice was almost hoarse. His heart trembled as he called out this name with a trembling voice. Mo Qingwu used all her strength to squeeze her petite head into Chu Yang's chest. She used all her strength to control herself so that she wouldn't cry out loud. However, her small mouth had already become extremely flat. And, tears silently gushed out from her eyes. She was holding it in so much that she actually felt a little dizzy. Chu Yang felt that his clothes on his chest were quickly soaking. Then, the soaking area slowly and rapidly expanded. Mo Qingwu's body trembled slightly in his arms. However, she still didn't say a word. She clenched her teeth tightly. However, the two hands that were hugging him became more and more forceful. What kind of grievances had she suffered in this year? At this moment, she needed to vent. Vent the grievances in her heart. Chu Yang knew. Therefore, Chu Yang didn't ask anything now. If he asked, Mo Qingwu would only feel more uncomfortable. Just let her be in his arms. Just let her be in his arms and feel his feelings for her. Chu Yang quietly hugged her. He didn't speak. After a long time, Mo Qingwu's body trembled slightly. Then, it slowly calmed down. Her throat made a moaning sound. She coughed a few times in Chu Yang's arms. Chu Yang could feel Mo Qingwu's breath coming out of her small mouth. It made his skin feel a little hot. Mo Qingwu tried her best to lower her head. She finally moved her head away from Chu Yang's bosom a little. But she still held him tightly. She used her free hand to wipe her tears with extreme caution. Her movements were very light. It seemed that she was afraid that Chu Yang would find out what she was doing. She didn't want big brother Chu Yang to see her tears after being separated for more than a year. She wanted to be happy. She wanted to smile at brother Chu Yang. However, she couldn't help but cry. Tears of joy, tears of grievance, tears of sadness, tears of finally meeting again. She wiped hard. She wanted to wipe away her tears. Then, she raised her head and smiled at brother Chu Yang. Brother Chu Yang, I missed you so much. She wanted to show brother Chu Yang the happy smile that brother Chu Yang liked to see. She wanted to let this smile tell brother Chu Yang that she was fine. Because you finally came. No matter what happened, it was all good. It was the best. However, the more he wiped, the more tears he shed. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't wipe them all away. She was a little flustered and hated herself. Why did she have to cry? Don't cry, little Wu. Brother Chu Yang is already here. Why are you still crying? You're safe. You're fine. With brother Chu Yang by your side, no one can hurt you. She tried hard to convince herself, but she couldn't stop herself from crying. In the end, she gave up and let her tears flow out. She sobbed and said, Brother Chu Yang, I'm sorry. I want to cry when I see you. Chu Yang gently stroked her long hair. He felt that his eyes were a little dry. He said, if you want to cry, then cry. Big brother Chu Yang will accompany you here. My light dance, regardless of crying or laughing, I like it. Everyone is happy. He hadn't even finished speaking when he heard a wah sound. Mo Qingwu opened her mouth and started to cry. She cried so hard that her heart was broken. Boo-hoo. Brother Chu Yang, I miss you so much. Boo-hoo, I dreamt of you that day. Boo-hoo, Mo Qingwu sobbed and cried. She used Chu Yang's clothes to wipe her tears. She poured her heart out at the same time. She couldn't remember anything now. The grievances that she had suffered had almost made her collapse several times. She had thrown them to the back of her mind. She only wanted brother Chu Yang to know how much she missed him, how much I yearn for brother Chu Yang's embrace. This is the only thing in the world that can make me feel at ease. Chu Yang held Mo Qingwu in his arms. He slowly walked a few steps, and sat down on the armchair that Jun Shizhu had sat on. He let this delicate and small body kneel on his lap. He tenderly looked at Mo Qingwu as she sobbed and poured her heart out. Her rosy little mouth flattened. There was a look of grievance on her face. She was very careful. It seemed as if she was afraid that brother Chu Yang would get tired of her. Gradually, the careful look disappeared. What was left was only grievance and longing. Slowly, the grievance also disappeared. What was left was only longing. It seemed as if Mo Qingwu hadn't felt any grievance or pain in the past year or so. There was only longing. There was nothing else. Mo Qingwu lowered her head as she spoke. But, she slowly began to gather the courage to raise her head and look at Chu Yang. Her eyes were brimming with tears. There was still grievance in the depths of her eyes. But, it slowly began to flash with shyness and joy. Mo Qingwu's tears finally stopped. She looked at Chu Yang in a daze. Then, she hugged Chu Yang's neck. Her face slowly turned red, and her eyes became swollen like peaches. She bit her lips, and timidly asked, Brother Chu Yang, do I look ugly now? Chu Yang shook his head vigorously. What are you talking about? My Qingwu is always the most beautiful at any time. Brother Chu Yang can't get enough of looking at you. Mo Qingwu felt relieved. She smiled. She gently stuck her face on Chu Yang's chest, and said in a low and satisfied voice, Brother Chu Yang, I'm very happy. I'm very happy. Then, she closed her eyes, and listened to Chu Yang's heartbeat. She felt the warm aura of brother Chu Yang's body. She curled up in his arms like a soft kitten. The corners of her mouth exposed a trace of a touching smile. Her little mouth finally curled up in happiness. I'm not afraid at all. I'm not flustered at all. I don't have to worry at all. I don't have to feel wronged at all. Brother Chu Yang is here. I don't have to worry about my things being taken away by others. I don't have to worry about being given away as a concubine. I don't have to worry about people looking down on me and abandoning me. Brother Chu Yang will protect me. Definitely. Everything is fine. Chu Yang's heart was peaceful and satisfied. Hugging this delicate little body, he seemed to feel that his life was finally complete. Brother Chu Yang, I'm very happy. This sentence was also silently said in his heart. Qing Wu, I'm also very happy. I can feel that you're full of vitality in my arms. I'm very happy. I'm very happy. He thought of his previous life. Mo Qing Wu weakly snuggled in his arms, and said, Chu Yang, I look better than the sword. Then he thought of today's sentence, I'm very happy. Chu Yang instantly felt that his previous life and this life were gathered together. His mind was a mess. It was strange and variegated. It was as if at this moment, he had returned to the purple bamboo forest of his previous life. Then, he suddenly returned like a dream. Feeling the warm and soft body in his arms, Chu Yang suddenly felt a burst of satisfaction. He silently said, Qing Wu, if there is a next life, I will dance with you under the heavens. I'm satisfied. I will definitely dance with you under the heavens. I won't have any more regrets. He lovingly lowered his head to look, and saw that Mo Qing Wu was dressed in red. Her soft hair was draped over her shoulders, and the red cloud steel butterfly was flashing on her head. She didn't have any other accessories besides this butterfly. Her long eyelashes softly stuck to her eyelids. Like a tired butterfly, she began to stopping in this warm embrace. Mo Qing Wu contentedly and happily sighed. She moved her arms that were a little sore from hugging Chu Yang. She changed her posture, squirmed a little, and hugged him tightly again. She didn't want to let go for a moment. I wrote 2,000 words for 14 hours. I deleted more than 10,000 words. The only thing I'm satisfied with is these 2,000 words. When I typed the title Brother Chu Yang, I'm so happy, my heart suddenly turned sour, and tears started to fall out of my eyes. I'm very happy. Because I wrote the feeling I wanted. Chapter 460. As the sun set in the west, rays of multicolored light shone upon the forest in the mountains, making it look like a sea of flowing light. Chu Yang carried Mo Qing Wu and walked out with a smile. It was as if he had walked out of a fairy tale. His black robe fluttered, his figure tall. Mo Qing Wu, dressed in red, lay in his arms. The sunlight on the horizon seemed to embed a layer of gold on Chu Yang and Mo Qing Wu's bodies. At least, in Mo Tianji's eyes, it was a kind of beauty that shook his soul in an instant. This feeling was so harmonious, so touching. Mo Qing Wu seemed to have grown on Chu Yang's body and would not come down no matter what. From time to time, she would raise her head and smile at Chu Yang. After a while, she would raise her head and smile at him again. Her smile was bright and satisfied. Mo Tianji stood there, dumbfounded by what he saw. He had been waiting here for an entire afternoon, waiting anxiously. But when he saw Chu Yang finally carrying Mo Qing Wu out, he was suddenly touched at this moment. He was not in a hurry. He had never seen his little sister so happy. Such happiness and satisfaction that overflowed from the depths of her heart. Mo Tianji looked on with satisfaction. The anxiety that he had been waiting for an entire afternoon seemed to have disappeared without a trace at this moment. Brother Mo, I'm taking Mo Qing Wu away, Chu Yang looked at Mo Tianji and said solemnly. Hearing the words Brother Mo, Mo Qing Wu raised her head in panic. She turned around and saw Mo Tianji, her second brother. Her eyes couldn't help but redden. But she bit her lip lightly and lowered her gaze. Little Wu, Mo Tianji stepped forward, his voice trembling a little. Mo Qing Wu bit her lip. After a long while, she said with difficulty, Second brother, Mo Qing Wu, do you want to go with me or Brother Chu? Mo Tianji looked at his sister with some longing. Second brother will also protect you. I'll go with Brother Chu Yang, Mo Qing Wu said without hesitation. Mo Tianji's eyes dimmed. I'm leaving. Chu Yang looked at Mo Tianji. Brother Mo, if you want to control the Mo clan, don't let go of this opportunity. Tianji agreed and then suddenly shouted, wait a minute. After he finished speaking, he ran over and looked at Mo Qing Wu and said, Little sister, I have a question that I have always wanted to ask you, but I didn't have the chance. Can I get your answer now? What is it? Mo Qingwu was still biting her rosy lips. The light in her eyes made Mo Tianji feel a heartache. Why did you suddenly become so estranged from your second brother? Mo Tianji said with some pain, second brother's heart is very uncomfortable. Mo Qingwu gritted her teeth. At this moment, it was obvious that she was using a lot of force. He looked at Mo Tianji, his second brother, with a complicated expression in his eyes. Then, he asked in a low voice, I have always wanted to ask you, second brother. Why didn't you dare to look at me on the day of the clan meeting? Mo Tianji was startled and suddenly raised his head. However, Mo Qingwu continued to ask, at that time, why did you tell him about my saber? Mo Tianji was startled. He only felt bitterness in his heart. There were 1,000 things he wanted to say, but he could not say them. This time, my family has betrothed me. As long as I return, I will be engaged. However, you are the first to come and pick me up. Mo Qingwu said with some anger, second brother, don't you know what I will face when I return? Mo Tianji felt as if he was struck by lightning. He took 3 steps back. He finally knew where he was wrong. He was wrong not to say it. He did all kinds of things but did not make it clear. These 3 things were all for Mo Qingwu's good. At that time, he did not dare to look at her because he could not bear to see his younger sister sad. However, he forgot that his younger sister was the most helpless at that moment. She needed someone to look at her and show that they were on her side. That way, she would feel much better. The appearance of the saber was to make a final effort so that his younger sister could get some care after losing her original position in the family. However, he neglected that his younger sister had nothing. At that time, that saber was all her hope and spiritual sustenance. However, he cruelly took it away. Now, he came to pick her up so that he could take her away and not let her return to the family to accept that cruel fate. However, he did not say it out loud either. His younger sister thought that he was sending her back to the fire pit. Who could he blame? Could he blame his younger sister for being too sensitive? However, if it was anyone else, how could they not be sensitive in that kind of situation? How could they not be sensitive? Chu Yang sighed and said, Qingwu, your second brother truly loves and cares for you. There is absolutely no falsehood in it. He truly wants you to be well. However, your second brother's habit is to do good things but not to say it out loud. This is your second brother's shortcoming. You have to believe in your second brother. Mo Qingwu lowered her head. Her long hair covered her face. She gently nodded. Mo Tianji looked at Chu Yang with a strange feeling. He repeatedly thanked him. Thank you, Brother Chu. Thank you, not saying what you did is equivalent to not doing it. Especially good things. Chu Yang casually said, Brother Mo, you did very well. However, what you said was not good. This weakness isn't good for being the patriarch of a family. Mo Tianji deeply nodded. He seemed to be deep in thought. He was obviously much stronger than Mo Tianyun. However, there were still many people in the family who supported Mo Tianyun. Ultimately, there was one thing, Mo Tianyun knew how to talk and win people's hearts. However, Mo Tianji had neglected this aspect. Although there were many hardcore supporters by his side, their numbers were far inferior. That was why he was at a disadvantage. Understanding this, Mo Tianji's heart suddenly became clear. Instead of acting, it was better to speak. This kind of understanding was inevitably a little cruel to people. It was unpleasant to hear, but it was the truth. After thinking this through, he was about to thank Chu Yang. However, when he turned around, he realized that Chu Yang had already carried Dian Qingwu a few hundred feet away. He hurriedly shouted, Brother Chu, little Wu, as long as I have time, I will go back to see you. Mo Qingwu raised her head from Chu Yang's embrace. Her gaze leaped over Chu Yang's shoulder. She saw her second brother standing there waving his hand vigorously. His eyes were full of reluctance. She couldn't help but feel moved. She stretched out her small hand from Chu Yang's shoulder and gently waved a few times. Mo Tianji's face was instantly full of smiles. Thank you, little sister. Mo Qingwu's face bloomed into a smile. Then, She hid her head in Chu Yang's embrace again. Mo Tianji relaxed and let out a sigh of relief. He relaxed and smiled. Then, he gently waved the purple jade flute in his hand and placed it on the flute. A whining sound of the flute suddenly floated in the forest. Mo Qingwu listened to her second brother's flute music. She was in brother Chu Yang's embrace. Suddenly, she felt as if she was floating in the clouds. Among all the women in the world, there was no one else who could be happier than her. The next day, the sky seemed to brighten exceptionally early. Mo Qingwu woke up early and ran happily into Chu Yang's room. When she saw Chu Yang lying on the bed, she couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. It turned out that she was afraid that she was dreaming yesterday. She immediately covered her small nose with her hand and said, "It's so smelly. Brother Chu Yang's feet are so smelly." She rushed to the door and breathed in a few breaths of air. However, she couldn't bear to leave. She could only stay at the door and squat on the threshold. Smelly. Chu Yang was a little depressed. He really did wash his feet last night before going to bed. Sigh, his feet were like this. Even if he washed them 10 times in one night, there would still be a smell tomorrow morning. He remembered that Mo Qingwu's only dissatisfaction with him in his previous life was the smell of his feet. He couldn't help but smile. He rolled up and shook his body. Instantly, the room was filled with a fragrant smell. Mo Qingwu covered her nose and ran away. "Brother Chu Yang, what are you shaking for? It's so smelly." Chu Yang laughed loudly. The great clans were already waiting for the battle. The bet was already over. They were only waiting for the opening of the battle. The huge venue was empty. There was actually a sea of people around. There were no empty seats. The best view was in the middle. It was the territory of the dark bamboo. It occupied a huge area. On both sides were the teams of the great clans. Then, there were even more scattered people who were waiting for this big battle. Dongwu Shong and the other clans were in the south. All the clans on Jiao Sheng's side were in the back. The 4 great clans in charge of the bet were naturally closest to the 2 sides. They were observing the outcome of the battle. Everyone's hearts were in their mouths. This wasn't just a bet. It also involved one's personal wealth. Once Chu Yang and Duke Yu bet 800 million, the odds for Jiao Sheng were immediately pushed down to 1-1. There were even more people who bet on Jiao Sheng. In just one day, there was an additional 100 million. If this money was before, Mo Tianyun and the others would definitely be grinning from ear to ear. But now, the 4 of them could only sigh. It was just a drizzle. The sound of drums shook the heavens and the earth. The battle was about to begin. The master of ceremonies was already standing in the middle. He raised his voice and shouted, "Everyone, silence." It would have been better if he didn't say silence. Once he did, countless people started to clamor at once. "Wife snatching! Wife snatching!" Many people shouted at the same time. They were in high spirits. "Wife, wife, wife snatching wife." More people shouted together. "Awu, wife." Luo Ku Di's strange cry resounded through the sky. Ji Mo angrily slapped his head. "What are you shouting for? That's my wife." Luo Ku Di smiled mischievously and said, "Who are we? Your wife is my wife." Ji Mo kicked him. Luo Ku Di screamed strangely as he rolled in the air like a rubber ball. At this moment, a tall and sturdy figure suddenly jumped down from the spectators' stand. He landed on the stage. He raised his hand and shouted like a thunderbolt, "Wait, I have something to say." Everyone looked over. They saw that this person had big shoulders and a round waist. He was tall and sturdy. His arms were big enough for a person to stand on. His buttocks were big enough for a horse to run. What an imposing and boorish man. However, this man's chest was bulging and his buttocks were perky. It turned out that he was a woman. This was the biggest bet of this competition. Huyen Aobo and Miss Huyen had appeared. Chapter 461. Everyone. Huyen Aobo shouted. She cupped her fists and bowed. This action was extremely heroic. If it was a man doing it, it would definitely be awe-inspiring. But now that she was doing it, cough cough, she was also awe-inspiring. Ji Mo's eyes lit up. He grabbed Chu Yang's arm and said, "Boss, this is my wife. Look. She's extremely charming." Upon hearing the words extremely amorous, Chu Yang only felt dizzy. The world was spinning, and even his feet were trembling. He sat down on Mo Qingwu's body. Mo Qingwu laughed and hugged him. She looked through the gap in Chu Yang's arm and saw the awe-inspiring Huyen Aobo. She couldn't help but exclaim, "This uncle is really tall and sturdy." Luo Kudi suddenly burst into laughter. Dong Wu Shong and Ji Yu Du Xing also couldn't help but laugh. Even Ji Zhu and Dong Wu Lei were swaying back and forth. Ji Mo's face turned bitter. "My little grandaunt, look carefully. Is that uncle? That's sister-in-law, okay. Sister-in-law?" Mo Qingwu was obedient and didn't say anything else. She looked at Ji Mo with a questioning gaze, especially when she looked at Ji Mo's eyes. She seemed to have discovered something. She nodded very seriously and whispered in Chu Yang's ear, "Brother Ji Mo's eyes are small, no wonder." Chu Yang's body trembled. On the other side, Jiao Sheng's face was as black as charcoal. "Everyone. As you all know, this battle is for me." Huyen Aobo exhaled and said majestically, "I am Huyen Aobo, Jiao Sheng's fiancé. We have been engaged since childhood. It's the order of the clan." Everyone gradually quieted down and listened to this woman speak. "But Jiao Sheng doesn't like me." In order to avoid this marriage, he even ran away from home and went to the lower three heavens. Huyen Aobo said indifferently, "I look different from ordinary women. I, Huyen Aobo, understand that he doesn't like me. After all, everyone wanted their woman to have a beautiful figure and to be lovable and charming. I admit that I'm not good-looking," Huyen Aobo said loudly. "Because I'm not good-looking, it's understandable that Jiao Sheng ran away from the marriage. I won't blame him. She wouldn't hate him. If I were a man, I wouldn't want a wife like her. Don't you all agree?" Huyen Aobo roared. However, no one replied. Seeing this woman speak, everyone suddenly felt their hearts sink. "That's why I don't have much hope for my marriage. That was until I met the second son of the Ji family, Ji Mo. He didn't abandon me and I fell in love with him. I immediately returned home and asked my family to cancel my engagement with the Jiao family." Huyen Aobo said loudly, "I originally thought that this matter would be a matter of course. Because Jiao Sheng ran away in order to escape the marriage. Would he want to marry me? Annulling the engagement should have been a matter of course. But who would have thought that Jiao Sheng would immediately say that Ji Mo had snatched his wife away from him? He couldn't bear the humiliation and wanted to fight Ji Mo. This is also the origin of this matter." Huyen Aobo laughed. "How laughable is this matter? This matter is getting bigger and bigger. Now, the 8 great clans are getting involved. Tens of thousands of heroes are waiting in anticipation." Huyen Aobo laughed mockingly and said, "Jiao Sheng, you are so generous." Jiao Sheng sat with an ashen face. He cursed in a low voice, "Bitch." Huyen Aobo laughed heartily. Then, she suddenly turned around and looked in Jiao Sheng's direction. She said in a loud voice, "Jiao Sheng, since you said that Ji Mo had snatched away your lover, and didn't hesitate to create such a huge battle, I presume that you like me very much. Then, as long as you agree, I will marry you right now. Are you willing to be your wife? Do you dare to marry me?" Jiao Sheng's face suddenly turned pale. Looking at Huyen Aobo's tall and sturdy body, he couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva with difficulty. "Jiao Sheng, are you willing or not?" Huyen Aobo laughed loudly. "Say something." Jiao Sheng finally couldn't bear it and said angrily, "You have already hooked up with Ji Mo. How can I still want you to be my wife?" As soon as these words came out, the large field was filled with boos. "If you don't want to marry her, why are you fighting? Is it fun to fight?" Someone said loudly. "Haha, this is ridiculous. Fighting for a woman, but not willing to marry her. Young Master Jiao is indeed unique." Someone ridiculed. "He just wants to get some compensation." In young Master Gao's heart, it's good that such a woman has left. But, if he can use such a woman to gain something, then he will gain both fame and fortune. Moreover, he will show the image of a century later in front of the heroes of the world. It's really pitiful. Someone laughed loudly. Huyan Bo looked coldly at Gao Sheng. Suddenly, she burst into laughter and said, "That's all I want to say. All right, everyone, I'm done. Those who should be beaten, fight, and those who should be watched, watch. Although I, Huyan Bo, am not good-looking, I don't want to be called a fickle woman. I just want to say these few words. That's all. Miss Huyan, you are a good woman who dares to love and hate." A big man suddenly stood up and laughed. "If I didn't already have a wife, I would definitely fight young Master Jimo to death today." Ha ha, ha ha, everyone applauded like thunder. Jimo's head was full of black lines. He muttered, "This woman, really. She attracted so many love rivals with just a few words. What should I do?" As he said this, his face was full of worry. Zun Wushong, Jiu Du Xing and Luo Ku Di rolled their eyes and looked at the sky. They thought, "This guy is crazy. We also admire Huyan Bo's temper and character. But, to marry her as a wife, we should politely decline." Mo Qing Ya's eyes were shining. She pulled Chu Yang's arm and whispered, "This sister's ears are so lovely." Jimo on the side immediately said, Yes, her figure is also very good. Think about it. With such a wife, she can shelter you from the wind and rain. How safe would that be?" Chu Yang painfully closed his eyes. He had the urge to tear Jimo into pieces. Fortunately, the competition had begun. The master of ceremonies announced loudly, "Competition of the 7 great clans. First round, Dong Wushong against Li Xiong-tu." Zun Wushong suddenly stood up. He stretched out his hand, and the pitch-black cloak on his body fluttered to the ground. His tall and majestic figure was revealed. His black saber stood erect behind his shoulder. He walked down step by step. Halfway down, he suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed loudly. His voice was like thunder, and rumbled in all directions. "Li Xiong-tu, you can give up now, and let Tu Qianhao come up. It's not too late. I'm afraid you won't have time to regret if my saber attacks you." Li Xiong-tu's tall and sturdy body suddenly stood up. His eyes were filled with a strong desire to fight. He laughed and said, "Dong Wushong, are you afraid?" Zun Wushong's eyes flashed and he said, "Very good." Both of them were thousands of feet away from each other. They looked at each other. They felt a heroic and majestic aura pressing down on them. Their desire to win was aroused, and they suddenly laughed at the same time. Chapter 462. 2 equally burly figures swept down from the stands at almost the same time, one on the left and one on the right. They flew towards the center of the arena. Although there were only 2 people, they seemed insignificant in such a grand arena. However, the people on the left clearly felt a huge mountain pressing down on them. The people on the right felt as if the earth trembled under this power. Dong Wushong's domineering aura soared to the heavens. Li Xiong-tu's heroic aura was unparalleled. These 2 people had met in the first round. It could be said that they were evenly matched. Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. He opened his eyes wide. The 2 most domineering people among the 12 future influential people were finally facing each other here. Chu Yang had some expectations for this battle. From this battle, he could completely see the direction of development of these 2 people. Because these 2 future influential people had now begun to shape their life's achievement. Dong Wushong's falling body suddenly let out a long roar. He stretched his hand back and pulled out the black saber in midair. This action of pulling out the saber immediately made the surrounding people boil with a boom. Because of his burly figure, he gave people a feeling of being as immovable as a mountain even when he was flying. His right hand, which was stretched back, moved very slowly. Everyone could see it clearly. But it was precisely this slow movement that left behind an extremely clear welcome. The procedure of this saber was very clear. Hand raised, finger pointed to the sky, hand over the shoulder, and hand holding the saber. Every action was clearly seen. It made people's vision and feelings seriously conflicted. It was extremely uncomfortable but also extremely mysterious. Then, a long rainbow-like saber light shot out from his saber. Following the motion of pulling out the saber, a black light was emitted. Dong Wushong's body suddenly changed the direction of his fall. Together with his saber, He turned into a long black rainbow and flew across the sky violently. He rushed towards Li Xiong-tu. He changed direction halfway, but the speed of this jump was much faster than the speed of his fall. The saber light was like a black dragon cutting through the air. It actually made a thunderous sound. The sleeves of his sleeves streaked through the air, and it actually emitted a loud crashing sound. On the opposite side, Li Xiong-tu let out a wild shout at the same time Dong Wushong changed his move. His body rolled, and a dazzling sword light suddenly appeared. The sword aura was as thick as a drum, and its whole body was emitting a bright and dazzling light. Like the tail of a meteor in the sky, it also changed direction in the air and madly rushed toward Dong Wushong. The two of them had unexpectedly adopted the same strategy. The first strike was to be as powerful as a thunderbolt, giving the other party a heavy blow. He heaved a sigh of relief and said in a soft voice, "Wushong has won this round." Jiu Du Xing and Ji Mo turned to look at him. In the arena, the two of them approached each other like lightning. They were already in the sky above the arena. Dong Wushong's eyes shone with an intense desire to fight. He shouted, "Slash!" His voice was like a thunderclap, and his saber was like a thunderbolt. With a ferocious aura that could cut through a mountain range, his saber chopped down. Li Xiong-tu didn't utter a single word as he rushed over. The sword light was blazing. Boom! The two men's majestic bodies collided with each other in midair. The saber and the saber intersected. Their four legs were also rapidly moving like butterflies. In an instant, they had exchanged 13 saber moves, 13 sword moves, and 13 leg. With a loud bang, a wave of air rolled out and spread in all directions. Dong Wushong let out a long shout, and his black hair suddenly fluttered in the air. He somersaulted twice in midair, and was shaken to retreat. On the opposite side, Li Xiong-tu let out a muffled groan. His beard fluttered, and he made the same move as Dong Wushong. He somersaulted in midair, and retreated 30 feet. The two of them were about to land on the ground at the same time. Dong Wushong pointed his black saber downwards, and the tip of the saber touched the ground. Dong Wushong's body, which was about to land on the ground, bounced up like a bullet. The saber light turned into a rainbow, and shot straight toward Li Xiong-tu. The curly beard on Li Xiong-tu's face exploded. The tip of the beard touched the ground, and bounced up. His entire body bounced up into midair, and suddenly fell down. The sword light actually turned into a dazzling snow-white disc, and went to meet Dong Wushong's attack. Dong Wushong's eyes flashed. His left hand was suddenly behind his back, and his right arm held the saber. The tip of the saber was slightly raised, and his body in midair changed into an even more forward-leaning posture. Following the violent momentum, the saber ruthlessly chopped on the sword light disc. The violence of this saber made the onlookers feel like closing their eyes, and couldn't bear to watch. A loud clang. The disc-like sword light suddenly became somewhat scattered. Dong Wushong's second saber fell down. Another loud sound rang out. Dong Wushong's right arm danced like a whirlwind. The heavy black saber was like a thunderbolt, violently falling down, lifting up, and falling down again. Barbaric. Yes, Dong Wushong's fighting style was extremely barbaric. Completely unreasonable. Under such barbaric attacks, no matter what kind of fancy moves, no matter what kind of moves, it was useless. What borrowing strength to fight strength, or what kind of tricks were all just nonsense. Unless you could block his attacks, and hold on until the moment the two of them separated, otherwise, you would only be reduced to dregs by his extremely barbaric attack. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of iron being hammered rang out continuously. Li Xiong-tu was suffering unspeakably. He had always been known for his great strength, and his hands were also made of specially made star iron. It weighed more than 50 kilograms, and if it were anyone else, they wouldn't be able to use it. But when facing Dong Wushong, he felt that the strength that he was so proud of actually paled in comparison to the other party. The other party's barbaric, violent, and completely unreasonable fighting style made Li Xiongyin, who had the same style, feel aggrieved. In the past, those who fought with Li Xiong-tu would all feel this. But now, it was finally his turn to bear it. Dong Wushong's face was cold and expressionless, and his attacks were like a storm. The bodies of the two people kept falling, and in the process of falling, they kept colliding. Dong Wushong actually didn't have any fancy moves, and without the slightest bit of skill, he chopped out 10 times in a row. The two people had already landed on the ground, and with a loud bang, the saber and sword clash. Dust and dirt flew up with a bang. Tens of thousands of people around felt their eardrums explode at the same time. Dong Wushong stood still, his long saber pointed forward. His eyes were cold and sharp, and he was as expressionless as steel, like an eagle. Li Xiongtu's body flew out like a cannonball with his long sword in hand. His feet landed on the ground and he flew for 70 to 80 feet before he landed on the ground with a puff sound. Then, he suddenly bounced up and spun in the air before he stood firmly on the ground. His face turned dark red for a moment before it turned pale. He raised his head and looked at Dong Wushong, his eyes already full of seriousness. He had actually already suffered internal injuries in this violent exchange of attacks. He didn't expect that this Dong Wushong, who was 4 or 5 years younger than him, actually had the strength to defeat him, and even kill him. This violent attack made everyone watching the fight hold their breath, and their hearts almost jumped out of their throat. Too violent. Too satisfying. This fighting style was too hooligan. Chu Yang watched the two people fight with rapt attention, and completely relaxed. Dong Wushong was definitely going to win this round. His strength and strength were not much different from Li Xiongtu's, and their spiritual power was also evenly matched. But Dong Wushong's advantage was that he could fight. He dared to fight. Moreover, Dong Wushong's aura was fierce and indomitable. Although Li Xiongtu's aura was domineering, he didn't have Dong Wushong's reckless spirit. The most important thing was, Dong Wushong's saber was more than 5 times the length of his opponent's sword. To tell the truth, Li Xiongtu's sword was still intact, and this was already very surprising to Chu Yang. The two people in the field looked at each other, and each roared loudly. Then, they rushed up and fought again. Du Xing, if you weren't injured, how would you deal with him? Chu Yang asked Jiyu Du Xing. As soon as he relaxed, Chu Yang immediately used this opportunity to teach Jiyu Du Xing and the others a lesson. This was a rare learning opportunity. Jiyu Du Xing, Ji Mo, and Luo Ku Di all turned their ears at the same time. Jiyu Du Xing smiled. My style is different from Li Xiongtu's. If I were to fight Wushong, I would launch intensive attacks from the beginning, and would never compete with him in strength. I would use the speed of my body movement to restrain his unparalleled strength. I would drag it out until his aura was exhausted, and that would be when he would be defeated. Chu Yang nodded and said, this method of yours can be used to deal with others. For example, against Li Xiongtu, it would be easy. But against Wushong, you would need to expend several times more energy. Why? Jiyu Du Xing didn't understand. Dong Wushong's saber is heavy. Heavy is an advantage. And it's not just a little heavy, it's too heavy. It's not easy to grasp its weight, but once it's grasped, it will form a kind of inertia. This kind of inertia only needs to be slightly manipulated to be able to unleash the full power of the saber itself. This is the advantage of heavy weapons. Chu Yang smiled. So, you see that Wushong is using all his strength in every move, but in fact, he isn't using much energy. And if you continue fighting like this, he will become braver and braver, and faster and faster. So, if you have the idea of wasting his energy, the final result will be that both of you are powerless, or both of you will be injured. Your injuries will be lighter, and his injuries will be heavier. This is the difference. If it's a life and death battle, you will be heavily injured, and he will die. Chu Yang said, and among the experts of the same level, perhaps only you, Jiyu Du Xing, can achieve such an outcome. Jiyu Du Xing was deep in thought. The best way to deal with Dong Wushong's fighting style is, don't let him go crazy and get excited. Suppress him right from the start. Then, you will be able to end the battle very quickly, Chu Yang said. How can you suppress him right from the start? Jiyu Du Xing frowned and thought hard. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Dong Wushong's strength lies in his saber. So, if you make use of your body movement to deal with his wrist before his attack reaches its peak, you will be able to deal with his wrist first. The wrist holding the saber is his Achilles heel. Yes. Chu Yang nodded. But, just like now, even if Li Xiongtu thinks of this, it's already useless. Because Dong Wushang's aura has already reached its peak, and Li Xiongtu's aura has already been reduced by half. Chapter 463. Dong Wushang and Jiyu Duxing were completely different. If Jiyu Duxing was a natural swordsman, then Dong Wushang was undoubtedly a natural warrior, a dashing warrior. Chu Yang nodded and looked at the opposite side. He saw that some people were whispering to each other. They seemed somewhat anxious. Obviously, they hadn't expected that Dong Wushang would be so powerful. Dong Wushang's reputation had risen during this time. But, he was still a few years younger than Li Xiongtu. Who would have thought that Dong Wushang would be able to firmly suppress Li Xiongtu? Especially the gamblers. Each of them opened their eyes wide. They were so nervous that they didn't dare to breathe. However, a few people had gathered together, and were whispering to each other. They were the leaders of the Gao clan, Li clan, and Tu clan. They were looking at the scene with dignified expressions. Chu Yang's eyes flashed. He thought, so, that's how it is. They want to take advantage of this competition. They want to form an alliance regardless of whether they win or lose. Presumably, this is the real intention of the Gao clan to provoke this decisive battle. It doesn't matter whether Dong Wushang wins or loses. The Dong clan and the Li clan are facing each other. These two clans are both colossi. So, the conflict between them will become more and more intense. Having a powerful ally in this situation is like sending charcoal in the snow. Zhun Shizhu gently sighed on the other side. She said, Li Xiongtu lost. Duke Yu stood beside her with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked at the scene without blinking. He slowly nodded and said, but, both of them have great potential. Zhun Shizhu thought for a moment and said, Dong Wushang should be stronger. Duke Yu said, Li Xiongtu made a strategic mistake. Li Xiongtu may not necessarily lose if he were to face Dong Wushang again. But, Dong Wushang is 5 years younger than Li Xiongtu. Zhun Shizhu said, you only look at the fighting strength. You don't think about this. But, this is a very important factor. Moreover, you must pay attention to one thing. Dong Wushang started to improve rapidly after he met Chu Yang. In other words, he was far inferior to Li Xiongtu. He only used a little more than a year to defeat him. This is the key point. Zhun Shizhu sighed and said, I'm suddenly very interested in this king of Hell Chu. Duke Yu nodded lightly and said, he is indeed a strange person. Moreover, its potential has reached a frightening level. Zhun Shizhu's eyes lit up as she said, frightening? She pondered for a moment, and then said, do you want to go and take a look? Duke Wei replied, all right. Then, his figure suddenly distorted, and disappeared from Zhun Shizhu's side. Zhun Shizhu's eyes flashed. She then faintly whispered, little Wei's otherworldly phantom technique has strengthened a lot. Could it be that he received some kind of stimulation and progressed? Zhun Lulu faintly smiled. Her eyes flashed with a proud brilliance. When Duke Yu came to Chu Yang's side, he saw Mo Qingwu sitting in Chu Yang's arms. She was happily peeling an orange, and stuffed a piece of the fruit into Chu Yang's mouth. Then, she stuffed the other piece into her own mouth. She puffed up her cheeks, and asked in a delicate and sweet voice, is it sweet? Chu Yang moaned in satisfaction and said, it's too sweet. After Xiao Wu's hands, it's indeed sweeter. He he. Mo Qingwu smiled with satisfaction, then, eat another petal. It's so sweet that you'll die. Then, she tore another piece, and stuffed it into his mouth. Chu Yang chewed the orange, and listened to this sweet sound. Suddenly, he felt absent-minded, and a name emerged in the bottom of his heart, Little Tian Tian. He couldn't help but sigh softly. The space beside him distorted, and Duke Yu appeared beside him. He said, so cool. Chu Yang snorted and said, are your injuries healed? Duke Yu snorted. He sat on the seat beside Chu Yang that Mo Qingwu had vacated, and said, your injuries also healed very quickly. Same here. Chu Yang blinked. A chaotic sound of metal clashing resounded in the field. Dong Wushang's loud shouts were getting more and more majestic. Li Xiongtu roared wildly, and did his best to counterattack. It was only a fight between two people. However, these two people had fought with a fierce and desperate aura of a magnificent army with thousands of men and horses. Dong Wushong roared loudly. The saber light and the sword shadow fiercely clashed together. Chu Yang closed his eyes and sighed. Li Xiongtu loss. Duke Yu nodded. In the field, the saber light and the sword shadow faded away. Dong Wushong stood upright in the field, and blood flowed from his shoulder like a waterfall. Li Xiongtu staggered backward. There was a line of blood on his forehead, and a terrifying saber wound on his chest. He retreated more than 100 feet, and was about to fall down. He hurriedly used his long sword to support himself on the ground. With a snap, the long sword broke. This sword had already clashed with Dong Wushong's black saber hundreds of times. It couldn't bear the heavy burden, and was full of scars. The moment he supported himself on the ground, it broke immediately. Li Xiongtu staggered, and sat on the ground. He roared and gasped for breath. Suddenly, he laughed bitterly, and roared towards the sky, satisfying. He continued, I've lost. Dong Wushong was expressionless. He held his saber and bowed. Then, he turned around and left. Li Xiongtu shouted, Dong Wushong, I'll look for you again. I don't need you to show mercy. Dong Wushong didn't even turn his head. He said, next time, I'll kill you. Li Xiongtu laughed heroically, and said loudly, motherfucker, it's fine if I've lost, but I've actually been sold a favor for not killing me. I've really suffered a great loss today. He turned his head and looked at the MC fiercely. Why aren't you announcing the result? Motherfucker, is it satisfying to sit here in a sorry state? The MC was shocked. He hurriedly said loudly, the first round of the competition between the 7 great clans, Dong Wushong vs Li Xiongtu. Dong Wushong wins. After he finished speaking, he hurriedly helped Li Xiongtu up, and helped him down. Li Xiongtu didn't have any strength in his body, but he laughed as he walked. He shouted repeatedly, satisfying. It's satisfying to fight like this. Duke Yu said, how was it? Chu Yang naturally understood what he meant. He said, very good. Dong Wushong's victory was already expected. But Li Xiongtu didn't lose his fighting spirit even though he lost. It's very rare. Duke Yu smiled, you really understood what I meant. An ordinary person would have thought that Li Xiongtu would have lost if he fought Dong Wushong again after this defeat. But, they would have overlooked the firmness of Li Xiongtu's heart of martial arts. This defeat, especially in the hands of Dong Wushong who has a similar style of fighting style, is a good thing for him. Chu Yang nodded. How can one of the 12 influential figures of the future of the 3 heavens lose his fighting spirit so easily? Ao Xieyun, Xiedan Qiong, and Oyu Du Xiao looked solemn in another direction. Ao Xieyun softly sighed and said, how was it? Xiedan Qiong bitterly smiled in shame, I'm afraid that I would have had no choice but to throw out the viburnum flower if I had fought against Dong Wushong. The consequence would have been that I would have died, and he would have been seriously injured. It would have been equivalent to my defeat. Oyu Du Xiao nodded in agreement and said, I could have killed him, but I would have had to use poison. But, it's also possible that I wouldn't have had enough time to use the poison, and would have been cut down by his saber. I don't have any assurance that I would have been able to use the poison technique in the face of such an attack. Ao Xieyun nodded, Dong Wushong has truly stepped into the top ranks after this fight. He pondered for a moment and said, I'm afraid that I would have had to pay a great price if I had fought against Dong Wushong. I didn't expect that Dong Wushong would have become so dreadful. Dong Wushong returned with large strides, and was greeted with a bear hug from Luoku Di. The second fight. Gao Liang of the Gao clan will fight against Luoku Wu of the Luo clan. The voice of the master of ceremonies came from afar. Luoku Wu laughed out loud. He looked at Luoku Di apologetically. Then, he stood up and walked down step by step. Gao Liang is the external younger brother of the Gao clan. He used to be a servant of the Gao clan. But, the clan saw that Gao Liang's aptitude was extraordinary. So, the clan bestowed him with the surname Gao, and trained him vigorously. He should be a first-grade sword king at present. He's 32 years old. Luoku Di's complexion was solemn as he said, I'm afraid that my elder brother may lose this fight. Chu Yang narrowed his eyes and looked at the two people walking towards the stage. He sighed and said, it's not that he may lose, but he's bound to lose. Luo Kudi, your elder brother, doesn't have a fighting spirit. If he really wanted to fight, it was still possible for him to fight until both sides suffered heavy losses. But the problem is, he doesn't want to fight this fight. Luo Kudi sighed and drooped his head. He knew his elder brother's thoughts. He wasn't a legitimate son, and couldn't threaten his elder brother's position. So, he had always had a good relationship with his elder brother. But, the problem was that he didn't get the clan's acknowledgement for this matter. It was already very good that his elder brother had come. Moreover, there was another reason. Luo Ku had once received Jiao Liang's favor. The other party had deliberately arranged the two of them for this fight. They must have seen this point. Even if Luo Ku could win, it would only be a draw. What's more, he couldn't win. Chu Yang had already thought of this point. He said, it's okay. We only need 4 wins out of 7. That's enough. Sure enough, Luo Ku lost by a single move as expected. The next fight was between Ji Zhu and Jiao Meng. Jiao Meng was the second duke of the Jiao clan. He wasn't a legitimate son either, but he was a martial arts genius. Ji Zhu entered the stage, and the two of them fought fiercely. In the end, both of them didn't have any strength left, and could only shake hands and make peace. 1 win, 1 loss, and 1 draw. What a pity. Duke Yu shook his head and sighed. Meanwhile, Jun Shizhu, who was watching the fight on the other side, also said, what a pity. Duke Yu saw that Chu Yang had turned his head to look at him. So, he said, Ji Zhu could have won. But, the great dream divine technique he's practicing has reached a bottleneck. And, it's time for him to make a breakthrough. He'll have to wait for the next opportunity if he gets injured. Ji Zhu can't afford to wait. So, he can only end the fight peacefully. Great dream divine technique. Chu Yang smiled. No wonder he's so lazy. It turns out that he's practicing this kind of lazy technique. Duke Yu smiled and said, in fact, you can help him make a breakthrough as soon as possible. Chu Yang curled his lips and said, I don't have that ability. Duke Yu smiled meaningfully. The fourth fight. 2 Wan Cheng against Dong Wu Lei. Dong Wu Shong's complexion changed. He said, I admit defeat in this fight. 2 Wan Cheng was a king-level expert of the previous generation of the Tu clan. He had always been vicious and merciless. Even Dong Wu Shong wouldn't necessarily be able to win against 2 Wan Cheng, let alone Dong Wu Lei. It was obvious that Tu Qian Hao was bullying people in this fight. Chu Yang's side had 1 win, 2 losses, and 1 draw after Dong Wu Lei had admitted defeat. Chu Yang was at a disadvantage. Everyone who had bet on Jiao Sheng to win was grinning from ear to ear. The 5th fight. Tu clan's representative is Tu Qian Hao. Against Jiyu clan's Jiyu Duxing. The atmosphere of the entire arena exploded along with these words. Many people had bet on Jiyu Duxing's injury. It could be said that this fight was the key. There was basically no need to compete if Jiyu Duxing lost. But Jiyu Duxing's injury wasn't a secret. How could he defeat Tu Qian Hao, who was at the same level as him, while he was seriously injured? Chapter 464. Jiyu Du Xing stood up with a swoosh sound. His stature was as straight as a sword. He walked down with an indomitable sharpness. Suddenly, a sword intent surged in the air. However, people with high cultivations could faintly see that Jiyu Du Xing's complexion was somewhat pale. It seemed that he was seriously injured and hadn't recovered yet. They couldn't help but sigh inwardly. It seems that Jiyu Du Xing won't have much luck in this match. A sharp light flashed in Tu Qianhao's eyes. He then burst into loud laughter. Brother Jiyu, you and I are facing each other again today. Jiyu Du Xing faintly smiled and said, yes, Brother Tu has been preparing for this match for a long time. I can't bear to disappoint you, Brother Tu. A trace of embarrassment flashed in Tu Qianhao's eyes. He then smiled and said, Brother Jiyu is indeed free and easy. I'm afraid that I won't be able to hold back in this match. Please forgive me if I injure Brother Jiyu. Dongwu Shong exposed an angry look in his eyes. He then said from behind Jiyu Du Xing, second brother, kill him. Kill this son of a bitch. Jiyu Du Xing slightly nodded. He then raised his voice and said, I'll be embarrassed if I injure Brother Tu. Suddenly, his figure flashed, and he flew down. It seemed as if a sword had been thrown out of his hand. His sleeves fluttered in the wind. His gaze was sharp. Each and every move of his was filled with a sharp sword intent. Everyone's spirit was lifted. Tu Qianhao also flew down. The two of them were old rivals. They had fought many times in the past year. Jiyu Du Xing had been no match for Tu Qianhao in the beginning. However, he was now on par with Tu Qianhao. Moreover, Jiyu Du Xing's reputation had soared all the way. In fact, he was now faintly on par with the number one Gong Ao Xieyun. All of this had raised an intense murderous intention in Tu Qianhao's heart. Tu Qianhao wanted to take advantage of Jiyu Du Xing's injury to cripple him in one fell swoop. And the purpose of his participation in this match was Jiyu Du Xing. Tu Qianhao looked at Jiyu Du Xing on the opposite side with rapt attention. His opponent's face was pale. He couldn't help but rejoice in his heart. Mo Tianyun's information was correct. This guy's injury isn't light. The eyes of Duke Yu and Jun Shizhu on the other side flashed with a playful look. Duke Yu smiled and said, King of Hell Chu, do you want to kill Tu Qianhao? Chu Yang smiled faintly. A murderous look flashed across his eyes as he said, if he wants to take advantage of me, then he must be prepared to go for wool and come home shorn. Duke Yu laughed mischievously. Kill him? Chu Yang spread out his hands indifferently. This depends on Du Xing's intentions. Killing sometimes required skills and methods. For example, how to clear your name after killing someone. At this time, the two people on the field had already drawn their sword. Most of the gamblers who had bet on Jiao Sheng were beaming with joy. He seemed to see the banknotes flying into his pocket. On the high platform, Ao Xieyun sighed and said, it would be too unfair if Jiyu Du Xing were to lose because of his injuries. What a pity for this lone traveler. Therefore, he could naturally see what Tu Qianhao wanted to do with a single glance. Then, he frowned and asked, have you arranged for the people who are ready? Xiedan Qiong smiled confidently, of course. Well, we must act immediately no matter who wins or loses. We must gather those poor bastards who have lost their family's fortune. Then, our three clans will divide the spoils equally. Don't let Mo Tianyun take advantage of us, Ao Xieyun said. Well, I'm afraid that Jiao clan also has this idea. We can only snatch a part of it at most. Oyu Du Xiao was somewhat annoyed. I'm afraid that our three clans would have been destroyed tomorrow if we had snatched all of it. Ao Xieyun faintly smiled. We must maintain a balance at all times. The two people gently nodded and said with a smile, Jiao Sheng has pulled together a small alliance in this gambling match. But they didn't expect that they would also form an alliance with their opponents. Moreover, our three clans will advance and retreat together because of this matter. Our interests are intertwined. Swift and fierce sword energy crazily burst forth. The two people on the field had already started to fight. Two groups of sword light flashed at the same time as they started to fight. Then, they spread out. Unexpectedly, no one could see their figures. Jiyu Duxing's sword light also gave people a feeling of loneliness and arrogance. On the other hand, Tu Qianhao's sword light had a swift and fierce murderous aura. No one knew that the two people on the field were talking in a low voice while they were fighting. Jiyu Duxing, you're dead today. Tu Qianhao crazily brandished his sword. His face exposed a pleased smile. Blame yourself for being in the limelight. Jiyu Duxing coldly snorted, it's not certain who will die. A loud clang sound was heard as Tu Qianhao fiercely blocked with his sword. Jiyu Duxing's body staggered, and he retreated a few steps. His face flushed red. A long sword was a light and agile weapon. So, it would never appear in a fight between experts unless it was a special sword like Li Xiongtu's. However, Tu Qianhao was very proud of himself at the moment. So, he wanted to use such a method to humiliate the seriously injured Jiyu Duxing. Everyone sighed as they saw Jiyu Duxing's situation. It seems that this genius of the Jiyu clan, the leading figure of the younger generation, is going to fall in such a sullen manner in this competition. Tu Qianhao was in high spirits. He was going all out with every move he made. He would roar every time he brandished his sword. He seemed quite heroic. He had a bit of Dong Wushong's style. However, Dong Wushong gave people the impression that he was mighty and overbearing. So, Tu Qianhao gave people the impression that he was a petty person intoxicated by success. Jiyu Duxing retreated step by step. His body would violently sway every time he received a sword attack. He would then retreat a few steps. His pale face had turned red, and his forehead seemed to be dripping with sweat. Tu Qianhao became even more high-spirited. No one could see it except for a few observant people. Jiyu Duxing's every parry seemed to be very difficult. He was at a complete disadvantage. However, his body would sway back, and he would consume Tu Qianhao's attacks. However, Tu Qianhao was able to withstand Jiyu Duxing's rebounding force. That was because he hadn't retreated a single step. His imposing aura was like a rainbow. Tu Qianhao's consumption of spiritual power was far greater than Jiyu Duxing's under such circumstances. Tu Qianhao wouldn't have been so foolish in normal circumstances. However, he didn't care about this consumption at this moment. That was because defeating Jiyu Duxing in this manner in front of all the heroes of the world was the most supreme glory. His reputation would surpass Ao Xieyun's in one fell swoop as long as Jiyu Duxing was defeated today. And, he would become the number one person of the younger generation. The reason was very simple, Jiyu Duxing and Ao Xieyun, these two were equally famous. The sound of impact continued to resound. Jiyu Duxing had already retreated around the big platform in a crooked manner. Tu Qianhao was also somewhat out of breath. However, Jiyu Duxing was still swaying on the opposite side. But, he didn't fall down. Tu Qianhao was furious in his heart. This bastard is still stubbornly holding on for what? The anger in his heart rose, and he exerted even more strength. He sent out 18 sword attacks in a row. Then, Tu Qianhao suddenly realized that Jiyu Duxing had raised his face, and was faintly smiling at him. His smile was full of ridicule. He was looking at Tu Qianhao as if he was looking at an idiot. Tu Qianhao's heart moved. He instinctively sensed that something was wrong. You're really stupid. How did a person like you become the Grand Duke of the Tu clan? Jiyu Duxing whispered, the Mo clan and my Jiyu clan have always been allies. You stepped into such a trap. It's really making me feel embarrassed. Tu Qianhao was startled. His mind suddenly went blank. Trap. Mo Tianyun framed me, but his 10th sword attack had already fiercely chopped down. Jiyu Duxing let out a long and loud shout under the watchful eyes of everyone. His body suddenly straightened up. It seemed as if a peerless sharp sword had suddenly been unsheathed. It emitted a startling radiance. The black dragon sword in his hand rushed out like a furious dragon, and fiercely collided with Tu Qianhao's sword. Bang! Jiyu Duxing's posture was straight. His face was cold and stern. Tu Qianhao screamed. He staggered back with his sword. A footprint appeared on the ground as he took one step back. Then, he took 3 steps back. Suddenly, he felt something sweet in his throat. He looked up to the sky, and spat out a mouthful of scarlet blood. Ji Duxing counterattacked with his sword. And, Tu Qian Hao was immediately seriously injured. The sound of a tsunami from the spectators' stands disappeared in an instant. Everyone looked at this scene in disbelief. They almost couldn't believe their own eyes. How is this possible? Ji Duxing let out a clear shout. He moved forward with his sword, and chopped down. He then said in a low voice, "I'm not injured. Do you understand now?" Tu Qian Hao's eyes opened wide in anger. He looked at Ji Duxing. He was so angry that he couldn't speak. At this moment, his heart was filled with boundless hatred for one person, Mo Tianyun. This bastard gave me false information. So, Mo Tianyun and Ji Duxing are in cahoot. Tu Qian Hao was so angry that he collapsed when he realized this. Bastard Mo Tianyun, damned Mo Tianyun. Mo Tianyun is so wicked that he doesn't even have an asshole. I will kill you, rrrr. You made me suffer so much. You made me suffer so much. Tu Qian Hao was extremely indignant. He wanted to curse. But, a mouthful of blood gushed out. He opened his mouth to spit it out. Ji Duxing's sword had already come over. Tu Qian Hao could only block it head-on. Bang! Tu Qian Hao's body staggered back. And, he spat out another mouthful of blood. Ji Duxing took a big step forward, and swung his sword again. Ji Duxing was dealing with Tu Qian Hao in the same way he had dealt with Tu Qian Hao a moment ago. The situation had completely reversed. The eyeballs of the spectators' stands fell to the ground. Fuck. This situation is unimaginable. Ji Duxing was bound to lose, but he had turned defeat into victory. And, Tu Qian Hao, who was bound to win, was battered and exhausted. Mo Tianyun asked me to cripple you. Ji Duxing swung his sword again. I also didn't want to. But, our Ji clan and the Mo clan had been friends for decades. So, I had no choice but to agree. Tu Qian Hao, you can only blame yourself for being too stupid. Tu Qian Hao looked at him with grief and indignation. He felt as if his heart was about to explode. He finally spat out mouthfuls of blood. Then, he bellowed, I will kill you all. His heart was filled with boundless hatred. And, it had almost materialized at this moment. Tu Qian Hao would have eaten Mo Tianyun alive if he had been in front of him at this moment. His agility and swordsmanship had become disorganized under extreme anger. And, he had exposed his weakness. Ji Duxing let out a long and loud shout. The black dragon's sword trembled for a while. Then, he swung his sword 3 times in a row. Tu Qian Hao's chest, right shoulder, and face were slashed. Then, a sword light blossomed in front of his chest. Ji Duxing laughed heartily. Then, he raised his foot, and ferociously stamped on Tu Qian Hao's chest. He kicked this Grand Duke of the Tu clan, and one of the future 12 influential figures, and sent him flying. Chapter 465. Tu Qian Hao was sent flying hundreds of feet away. He felt as if the sky and earth were spinning. He spouted a mouthful of blood, and fell into a semi-conscious state. He only heard Ji Duxing whisper urgently, Mo Tianyun asked me to carve the words "number 1 fool in the world" on your chest if your plan failed. I'm sorry, but I've already done it. Although you won't be able to hear me anymore. However, Tu Qian Hao had heard it. He had fainted from anger because he had heard it. The entire place was silent. No one had expected such an outcome. The insufferably arrogant Tu Qian Hao had been sent flying by a kick like a broken sack. Ji Duxing leisurely returned in triumph. The people of Tu clan came forward, and carried Tu Qian Hao away. They looked at Ji Duxing with a complicated expression in their eyes. Ji Duxing has obviously shown mercy. Tu Qian Hao didn't die. His injuries were serious, but they weren't life-threatening. Moreover, they weren't crippled. We owe Ji Duxing a big favor. Oyu Du Xiao and Xiedan Qiong opened their eyes wide. They stretched their necks forward, and blankly looked at the field. There were only 2 words in their hearts: it's over. We've lost miserably this time. Ao Xieyun's eyes were also somewhat blank. His eyeballs were showing signs of turning blue. He suddenly patted his thigh, and his complexion turned somewhat sinister. Motherfucker. We've been schemed against. This evil duke had always been graceful and elegant. But he had unexpectedly spouted vulgarities today for the first time. He finally understood why Chu Yang had suddenly thrown down such a big bet. Why did the Dark Bamboo Gang let go of the hidden bid after they had rearranged it? Instead, they had thrown 500 million into the open bid. There's a reasonable reason for all of this now. However, this reason left people speechless and aggrieved. Jiyu Duxing wasn't injured. In fact, his injuries weren't as serious as Mo Tianyun had said. He had already recovered. And Tu Qianhao had suffered a big loss because of this. Otherwise, Tu Qianhao would have been able to fight with Jiyu Duxing with his strength. But he had lost in a muddle. Moreover, he had lost so miserably that he didn't have the strength to turn the situation around. The three great dukes looked at each other in dismay. They looked at each other's mournful expressions, and felt extremely aggrieved in their hearts. Motherfucker, which one of us isn't a genius? Who was less scheming? How could he be fooled like this? Stop sighing. That's not a good expression. Ao Xieyun recovered very quickly. He smiled lightly and said, actually, we should be rejoicing. Luckily, young Master Mo took that 1 billion for himself. Otherwise, if we were to pay another billion, our three families would really be bankrupt. I'm afraid that the three of us would also have to sell ourselves back as slaves to repay our debts. Oyu Du Xiao and Xiedan Qiong finally reacted. They smiled in a manner that was uglier than crying. Ao Xieyun pursed his lips and said, look at Grand Duke Mo's expression. How exciting this moment is. Hearing this, the two of them looked over. As expected, they couldn't help but laugh at his misfortune. He saw that Mo Tianyun was lying on his seat with his limbs spread wide open. It seemed as if he was paralyzed. His face was deathly pale, and his lips were trembling. His eyes were filled with shock and indescribable fear. He had already turned into a deathly grey color. Mo Tianyun had personally planned this gamble. He had exhausted all his efforts, racked his brains, and used up all his assets to create such a situation. Xiedan Qiong and Oyu Du Xiao felt as if they had taken a cold bath on a hot summer day when they imagined Mo Tianyun's current mood. Their entire bodies felt extremely refreshed. Normally, they wouldn't be so happy if they were about to lose several billion. However, they were very proud. This kind of mood was very strange. It was as if they hadn't lost. Instead, they were happy as if they had won. Motherfucker, I lost. I lost. But you, Mo Tianyun, are much more miserable than us. It turns out that I'm not the most miserable one. They felt a lot more comfortable as they thought of this. The fifth match, Jiyu Duxing vs Tu Qianhao. Jiyu Duxing wins. The voice of the master of ceremonies reverberated. He was so shocked that his tone changed. It couldn't be helped. It was too unexpected. The entire spectator stands on all sides boiled up with this loud shout. It seemed as if oil had been poured on the fire. Fuck. How is this possible? Didn't they say that Jiyu Duxing was injured? Who said that Jiyu Duxing won't live long? Motherfucker, how could they not have bet on Jimo's victory if they hadn't said so? I'm so angry. What's going on? He won. Who the fuck released this fake news? I'm going to kill him and bring him home. Didn't they say that he was injured by Mo Tianyun? Motherfucker Mo Tianyun. He cheated me. I bet 200,000. Motherfucker Tu Qianhao. He's so awesome every day. Who would have thought that he couldn't beat Jiyu Duxing? Fuck, this bastard has been eating for several years more than Jiyu Duxing. Motherfucker. His diarrhea is several times heavier than Jiyu Duxing's. He's a fucking piece of trash. He's making me lose money. Mo Tianyun released this fake news. Mo Tianyun released this fake news. Mo Tianyun released this fake news. Mo Tianyun deceived us. Suddenly, someone started to wail. Hundreds of people responded to his call. Countless people started to shed tears. One person suddenly stood up and loudly shouted, "Motherfucker Mo Tianyun." These words immediately resonated in everyone's hearts. They were the best embodiment of their inner thoughts. Immediately, Thousands of people started to shout in unison like a tsunami, "Motherfucker Mo Tian Yun! Motherfucker Mo Tian Yun! Motherfucker Mo Tian Yun!" The cultivations of these people weren't ordinary. So, they simultaneously used their full strength to shout. And their momentum shook the heavens. Mo Tianyun's prestige had reached the peak of his life at this moment. Chu Yang looked at Jiu Duxing, who had come forward. He blinked his eyes in tacit understanding. "You didn't kill him?" "I didn't kill him." Jiu Duxing's grave and stern face exposed a sneer. "Let him play with Mo Tianyun first. It won't be too late to kill him later." He winked at Chu Yang as he said this. Chu Yang couldn't help but smile. He suddenly recalled Jiu Duxing's invisible sword energy. He suddenly realized that Jiu Duxing wouldn't let Tu Qian Hao off so kindly. 2 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw. This was equivalent to not having fought a single match. There were still 2 matches left. However, the mood of the spectators' stands had exploded like a barrel of gunpowder. It couldn't be contained any longer. Mo Tianyun's stand was flooded with banana peels, fruit cores, and other things in the blink of an eye. There were also many people who took off their shoes and threw them over. There were also some strange things. Mo Tianyun's stand had opened a grocery store in an instant. There were only things that one couldn't think of. The strangest thing was that there were also a few underwear that had been thrown over. They still carried body temperature and the smell of cosmetics. It was hard to tell where they had come from. The master of ceremonies was somewhat at a loss as to what to do on the stage. It was useless for him to shout now. The match couldn't be carried out. The excited crowd couldn't hear him no matter what he said. Duke Yu, who was beside Chu Yang, wrinkled his brows. Then, he suddenly let out a long and loud shout. Wind and thunder surged, and suppressed the shouts of thousands of people in one fell swoop. Duke Yu scolded loudly, "What are you shouting for? Do you all want to die? Which one of you will come out and let me see?" "It's Duke Yu." The crowd cried out in a low voice. Everyone's face was still full of indignation. But they didn't dare to jump out and cause trouble. "Duke Yu, fuck. This guy will kill someone if he says one more word. Moreover, Jun Shizhu is also here. Fuck. How could everyone forget about this?" Duke Yu looked around and said, "People of Dark Bamboo, listen to my orders. Maintain order on the stage. Kill whoever dares to make a ruckus." His voice carried a heavy murderous aura. Everyone could hear it clearly. "Yes, Master Yu." All the people of Dark Bamboo shouted together. Everyone was silent out of fear. Chu Yang exclaimed in his heart. The people of Dark Bamboo would maintain order. It was much more effective than Ao Xiayun and the other righteous people. The master of ceremonies heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he hastily shouted, "Match number 1, Luo Ku Di of Luo clan versus Li Hong Tu of Li clan." Luo Kedi let out a loud howl, and Xing Shui struggled to stand up. He looked up to the sky and howled, "Awu tilde 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 tilde, it's finally my turn." At this moment, Gao Sheng suddenly laughed out loud. He stood up and said loudly, "Jimo. It's 2 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw now. Let's skip Luo Ku Di's match. You and I will decide the winner directly. How about it?" He smiled and said, "Jimo, you know that a fight between you and me is inevitable. So, why don't we settle it here? Show your courage in front of all the heroes of the world, and fight with me." Everyone cursed Gao Sheng for being shameless when these words came out. It was obvious that Li Hongtu was no match for this newly promoted king-level Master Wolf Sword. So, Gao Sheng was clearly avoiding the important and dwelling on the trivial by mentioning this point. "Gao Sheng, do you want to save your face?" Huyen Ao Bo stood up in another direction. Her face was full of anger. "Snatch someone's love? How can you say that?" Luo Kudi was also furious. "Gao Sheng, what do you mean?" Gao Sheng didn't answer. He only looked at Jimo. Jimo laughed out loud. He stood up and said loudly, "Gao Sheng, I was just about to teach you a lesson. You're a flashy bastard who occupies the latrine but doesn't take a shit." Huyen Ao Bo's face turned black. She fiercely looked at Jimo. Then, she sat down angrily. Occupying the latrine but doesn't take a shit. What do you mean? Jimo, you're dead. Huyen Xiaohui thought angrily in her heart, he doesn't know how to talk. This bastard's mouth must be taught a lesson. Chu Yang looked at Jiao Sheng and said in a low and hurried voice, Jimo, don't forget what I said. Jimo nodded. He pursed his lips and said, don't worry, big brother. I will win. This match isn't optimistic. Dukyu looked at Jimo, and then looked at Jiao Sheng. He frowned. With his insight, he could naturally see that although Jimo had rushed up quickly, his foundation was not enough. Jiao Sheng, on the other hand, was fighting steadily and surely. Both of them were second-grade king-level masters. But Jiao Sheng was at the peak of second-grade king level. And Jimo was at second-grade king-level master. There was a big difference between them. I think Jimo will win, Chu Yang said confidently. There may be twists and turns, but he will win in the end. Are you so sure? Dukyu suspiciously looked at Jimo and Jiao Sheng. He re-evaluated in his heart, and felt that Jiao Sheng had a bigger chance of winning. He couldn't help but doubt Chu Yang's words. He could see everything clearly at a glance. There wouldn't be any accident. Brother Yu, why don't we make another bet? Let's add some stakes. Chu Yang narrowed his eyes. He looked at Dukyu's eyes as if he had found a mountain of gold. Chapter 466. Bet. Dukyu tilted his head and looked at Chu Yang. He couldn't help but mutter in his heart. If it was someone else, Dukyu would definitely bet without hesitation. But the one in front of him was Chu Yang. Dukyu had long been wary of this fellow's elusive methods. His eyes flickered as he thought for a while. Finally, he felt confident. Even if Jimo had super powerful methods or exquisite sword moves like Chu Yang's, or even if he could make Jiao Sheng panic, the final victory might not be able to surpass his level. He asked, what do you want to bet? The sword spirit hurriedly reminded him in his mind, white crystals. Bet his white crystals. What the tribulation sword needs the most now is not the more high-end purple crystals, but white crystals. Chu Yang smiled and understood. He said, how many white crystals do you have? Dukyu's eyes flickered. He said unhappily, are you looking down on my white crystals? How big is your appetite? You're asking me how many I have. I'll bet as much as you have. Chu Yang was very calm and composed. He was very rich now. In the tribulation space, there were 2 rare herbs, jade snow spirit ginseng, and piles of mysterious jade ice crystals and mysterious young jade. Any one of them was a rare treasure in the world. When it came to gambling, he was not afraid of anyone. I don't have many white crystals. Dukyu looked at him with some ridicule, but I only have a few tens of thousands of them. And there's a white crystal mine. You want all of them? What are you betting with? The sword spirit quickly calculated in his mind. His face was shining. Tens of thousands of white crystal mine. This is going to be rich. If the tribulation sword absorbed all of them, it would be able to upgrade by a whole level. A piece of mysterious jade ice crystal and a piece of mysterious young jade. The sword spirit gave the price. Both of them are the size of a fist. Chu Yang almost fainted. You want to bet Dukyu's entire white crystal mine with just a piece of mysterious jade ice crystal and a piece of mysterious young jade? Don't worry, just say it like that. The sword spirit was full of confidence. Dukyu should be practicing the shadow sect. Although these 2 pieces of jade are not worth such a high price, he will definitely bet. He thinks this is what he needs the most right now. White crystals are just a burden to someone like him. What are you betting against me? Dukyu looked at Chu Yang playfully. He found it somewhat funny in his heart. When did I start using my wealth to smash people? However, Dukyu felt a sense of accomplishment in his heart when he saw that the little girl was left speechless. This is the most precious thing I have. Chu Yang sighed, if you're satisfied, then let's make a bet. If you're not satisfied, then just pretend that I didn't say anything. Chu Yang reached into his bosom and fished it out. Then, he hung his head dejectedly and said, only these 2 pieces are all of my assets. Dukyu was smiling smugly when he saw the things that Chu Yang took out. His mouth suddenly opened wide, and his eyes bulged out. In Chu Yang's palm, there were two fist-sized pieces of jade stacked together. The top piece emitted a faint chill, while the bottom piece emitted a faint warmth. One hot, one cold, one yin, one yang. It seemed as if an absolutely balanced cycle had been formed in Chu Yang's hands. A misty white and warm moisture rose up from Chu Yang's palm. It didn't disperse, and just floated there. Mysterious jade ice crystal. Mysterious young jade. Dukyu's eyes were fixed. His Adam's apple moved up and down as if he was swallowing something. Is it okay? Chu Yang asked somewhat nervously. I know it's a little too little. I can't do anything if you don't want to make a bet. It's a little too little. These are a lot. Dukyu said emotionlessly. Let's make a bet. How can I not make a bet? I'll make a bet. A real man keeps his word. I won't regret a promise even if I die 100 times. Then let's make a bet. Chu Yang asked with certainty. Let's make a bet. Dukyu anxiously snatched the mysterious jade ice crystal and mysterious young jade. He fondled them lovingly and said, I'll take care of the gambling capital. I'll be the notary. You don't have to worry, right? Haha, you don't have to worry. Chu Yang was speechless. You're participating in the bet. You're the party involved. You're the notary? Is there such a saying in the world? Don't worry. Dukyu patted his shoulder and said, I won't let you make a loss. If you lose, these things will be mine. Then, I'll compensate you with 1,000 white crystals. If you win, I'll exchange all my white crystals with you. How about it? Chu Yang was furious. This guy's words were too shameless. What do you mean by if I win? I'll bet all your white crystals. Chu Yang flew into a rage. Hey, it's meaningless if you're anxious, isn't it? Dukyu said shamelessly, you see, these two pieces of jade are already in my hands. You can't do anything even if I run away with them, right? But my character is good. Not only did I not run away, I even stayed behind to gamble with you. Moreover, I'll compensate you if I win the bet. I won't go back on my word if I lose the bet. You should be grateful to me. There are many people who kill and rob in these 3 days. How many of them talk about integrity like me? Dukyu said. Chu Yang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Fine, you'll take them away if you win the bet. You'll still take them away if you lose the bet. Talk about integrity. Brother, if you go into business, you'll definitely be as rich as a country. Fine, but I have a request. Chu Yang finally revealed his fox tail. Since you've taken advantage of me, I'll naturally have my own request. If you lose, I'll go to your treasury and personally inspect the goods. In addition, I'll also take away the purple crystal core that you owe me in the lower 3 heavens. Dukyu was displeased. Do you think I'll go back on my word? Chu Yang thought, you still have the face to say this. What you're doing right now is going back on your word from start to finish. What do you think? Chu Yang sneered. Dukyu reached out and put his arm around his shoulder. As if they were good brothers, he said, fine, it's settled then. It's a deal then. Hehe, then no matter who wins or loses, these 2 pieces of jade will be mine. This duke will not decline this responsibility. Haha, who asked me to be the most qualified in the lower 3 heavens? Don't you think so? Chu Yang turned his face away and spat. He really had nothing to say. Mo Qingwu, who had been listening to their conversation in his arms, raised her head and looked at Dukyu angrily. You're really too bad. You actually cheated my brother Chu Yang's things. In my opinion, you should return these 2 pieces of jade to brother Chu Yang. Then, no matter who wins or loses, you should give all the things in your treasury to brother Chu Yang. Dukyu glared at this little girl. Finally, he spread his hands helplessly and said, I'm a little unreasonable. But, I'm not as unreasonable as you, you're the unreasonable one. Mo Qingwu said fiercely. Fine, I'm unreasonable. Dukyu dejectedly admitted. Then, he turned around and went to sit with Jiyu Duxing, far away from this troublesome place. From afar, he could still hear the little girl pouting and muttering in dissatisfaction. This is too unreasonable. Dukyu staggered and almost fell to the ground. In Chu Yang's mind, The sword spirit was very happy. He said, "You'll be rich as long as you win this round." "What do you mean?" Chu Yang asked in puzzlement. "There are so many white crystals. The essence contained in them can allow the tribulation sword to break away from the level of ordinary metals like gold, silver, copper, and iron. It can be upgraded to a spirit sword. Once it becomes a spirit sword, you can treat Mo Qing Wu's injuries." The sword spirit tempted. "I can treat her injuries now." Chu Yang rolled his eyes. "Doesn't this require an extremely safe space?" "Nonsense. If you treat her injuries now, of course, you can heal her 3 yin meridians. But the greatest effect of the heavy pill will be wasted." The sword spirit rolled his eyes. "But, after upgrading to a spirit sword, I can use the heavy pill to connect her 3 yin meridians. Then, I can seal the medicinal efficacy in her body. As she progresses level by level, it will gradually increase. Then, when she reaches the emperor level, the medicinal efficacy in her body will completely explode, and she will rush to the monarch level in one fell swoop. This is the true power of the heavy pill. Moreover, as long as you do this, not only will her cultivation speed far surpass that of any so-called genius, but it will also play a life-saving role in critical moments." The sword spirit snorted and said, "That's all. You decide. If you insist on treating her injuries at this time, I won't stop you." Chu Yang was overjoyed. He said, "What else is there to say? Of course, I have to get the white crystals first. Anyway, I will rely on Jukyu to get the white crystals after the fight. It won't take much effort." "Ha ha." The sword spirit looked at him in disdain. Then, he sank into his consciousness and didn't speak. Jimo's appearance was somewhat low-key. He walked down step by step. He secretly adjusted his strength with every step he took. He knew that the gap between him and Jiao Sheng wasn't small. Therefore, he didn't dare to be the slightest bit careless. He tried hard to control his temper. He didn't want to waste any bit of his strength outside of the fight. Flying down was naturally very glorious. But Jimo didn't want to waste this little bit of strength. After all, this was related to his marriage. Who would his wife belong to? Jiao Sheng didn't have any psychological pressure whether he won or lost. But he couldn't do the same for himself. Jiao Sheng had been waiting on the field for a while. But Jimo was still walking down at a moderate pace. He couldn't help but say angrily, "Can you be faster?" Jimo rolled his eyes. "What does it matter to you whether I'm fast or slow? Are you that anxious to get beaten up?" He was cautious in his heart. But he didn't want to suffer a loss with his mouth. He remembered Big Brother Chu's teachings in his heart. "You must be calm. Don't be anxious." Of course, it would be more ideal if you could scold Jiao Sheng until he became anxious. "Go ahead. I believe in your eloquence." Jiao Sheng sneered and said, "Jimo, are you afraid? What's wrong? You have the guts to do it, but you don't have the guts to bear the consequences." "Ha ha ha, Jiao Sheng, this sentence of yours is ridiculous. What do you mean by having the guts but not the guts to bear the consequences?" Jimo let out a long laugh. "Do you think that such a big occasion would have happened if I hadn't agreed?" This sentence was true. Jiao Sheng had proposed a challenge. But there wouldn't have been this grand occasion if Jimo hadn't agreed. Jimo said in a loud voice, "I, Jimo, have come at least. I, Jimo, have come at you. At least. I, Jimo, dare to take responsibility. I dare to love. I dare to fight for my woman. At least. I, Jimo, am not like some people who run away from an engagement. If you don't want to, then just say that you don't want to, right? No one is forcing you. But you're still dragging it out. You won't cancel the engagement." "Why?" Jimo roared. "You've taken a fancy to the Huyen clan's status and wealth. Do you think that the heroes of the world are stupid? That they can't see your intentions? Everyone. Don't you think so?" Jimo raised his voice and roared. Thousands of people responded in unison, "Yes." Jimo became even more complacent. He waved his hand in all directions in a very graceful manner. He assumed the role of a leader. Then, he continued to speak eloquently, "Jiao Sheng, You covet strength and covet wealth. This is human nature. Even if you say it out loud, you'll only say that your character isn't good. But what you shouldn't do the most is to ruthlessly delay a woman's youth while coveting everything. How much is a woman's youth? You're hogging it like this. But you don't have any follow-up. Are you still human? Gao Sheng's lips trembled with anger. He pointed his finger at Mo. You're talking nonsense. I'm Gao Sheng. How can I be that kind of person? You are. Mo bellowed condescendingly. He saw that Gao Sheng still wanted to refute him. So, he continued to shout, You are. Tens of thousands of people roared with laughter. Then, thousands of people joined in the fun, and shouted, You are. Huyen Aobua stood in a daze in the Huyen clan's camp. She looked at Mo from afar. She suddenly felt sad and moved in her heart. Mo raised his hand in a dignified manner. Everyone, this brother hasn't finished speaking. Ha ha ha. Second Master Ji, please speak. Everyone burst into laughter. But they didn't make any noise. I, Mo, have spared no effort. I have traveled thousands of miles. I have traveled through the stars and the moon. I have come here to participate in this battle for the sake of my beloved daughter. Why? Mo looked up and roared, It's because of the true feelings in my heart. Awu tilde dog aunt. Tens of thousands of people shouted at the same time, For the true feelings in my heart. Awu tilde dog aunt. Then, someone quietly asked the person beside him, Brother, this dog aunt, what is she? That person was waving his arms and shouting. But, he replied in a bad mood, How would I know what she is? You go and ask Second Master Ji. Then, he continued to wave his arms and roar, For the true feelings in my heart. Awu tilde dog aunt. Mo walked down a few steps in high spirits. Then, he waved his arms and shouted, I will rescue my beloved daughter from the evil young master's hand. I will give her happiness. I will give her a future. I won't let some evil people with ulterior motives succeed in their schemes. Awu. Dog aunt. Tens of thousands of people shouted in unison, Second Master Ji is mighty. Awu. Dog aunt. Mo was in high spirits. He waved his arms. His entire face was impassioned. He suddenly felt his blood boiling. He raised his hand towards the sky, and roared, Heaven, give me strength. Let me defeat evil. Let me save her. Protect her. Accompany her. Give her happiness. Then, he suddenly roared in an earth-shattering manner, Make her my wife. Awu tilde. Everyone was boiling over. The entire audience was boiling over. Who had ever seen such a bold courtship in this day and age? Huyen Aobua looked at Mo with boundless tenderness in her eyes. Many womenfolk of the Huyen clan had also arrived behind her. They were hugging their shoulders, and saying that this was too corny. But, their eyes were flashing with deep envy. Gao Sheng was fuming with anger at this moment. His body trembled, and he almost spouted a mouthful of blood. Fuck. Mo, have you come here to fight? Or to sing? Chapter 467. Mo walked down from the top. Halfway down, he had already stirred up the crowd's emotions. At first, only the people from the Jiu, Luo, Dong, and Ji clans and those who had bet on Mo were cheering. But later on, the entire crowd was cheering. Even those who had bet on Gao Sheng were cheering. Because Mo's words had struck a chord in everyone's hearts, it's understandable for you to pursue power and wealth. But you can't force a girl you don't even like to get all these for power and wealth. Not only are you letting down the two great clans and that girl, you're also letting down yourself. Then what right do you have to fight for all these? You actually want to duel with someone because of this. I bet on you because I want to win money, but this doesn't mean that I don't despise your character. I'll scold you, I'll boo you, but as long as you win, I'll still take the money. I'll praise you, I'll support you, but if you lose, I'll still compensate you. What's wrong with that? Therefore, Second Master Ji's prestige grew. As he walked down, he waved his hand gracefully. His face was radiant, and he was so moved that his buttocks were unconsciously swaying. Hence, he started to sing this song, swaying his hips, and even walking with his feet splayed outwards. He was as steady as a mountain as he walked down the stairs. We must win. Second Master G raised his arms and shouted. We must win. The crowd shouted in unison. We must defend our true love. Second Master G took 2 steps forward and continued to shout in a majestic manner. Defend our true love. The crowd shouted together. We must defeat the devil. Second Master G continued to work hard. Defeat the devil. The crowd's emotions grew more and more excited. Awoo tilde tilde tilde. Second Master G waved his arms. His lips curled up, and he let out a standard wolf howl. Awoo tilde tilde tilde. The crowd howled together. Dog aunt tilde tilde tilde. Second Master G was so excited that he couldn't tell north from south. He swayed his buttocks and jumped. Dog aunt tilde tilde tilde. The crowd was boiling with excitement. Below, Jiao Sheng was so angry that his hands and feet were cold. His face was sallow, and his lips were trembling. He looked at the incomparably cool Ji Mo with hatred. With a cracking sound, one of his teeth was crushed. I. If I can't kill you, I'll. Jiao Sheng thought frantically. On the spectator stand, Chu Yang looked at Dukyu. Are you still sure that Jiao Sheng will win? Dukyu let out a long sigh. I can't be sure. Now that Ji Mo was in the limelight, Jiao Sheng was so angry that he became impatient. He will not be able to maintain his icy state of mind during the battle, and the outcome will be hard to predict. Chu Yang chuckled mischievously. He pointed at the boiling crowd and said, these are all forces. They are also important conditions for the decisive battle. The saying the more the merrier isn't just for show. Duke Wei said, there's nothing wrong with using such methods. However, it's still somewhat despicable. Chu Yang sneered, this is a decisive battle. He had to make use of every possible factor to attack the enemy. Was that enough? It was far from enough. Just wait and see. Ji Mo finally walked down from the grandstand. Then, he arrogantly stepped onto the field. He walked for a full hour on this path. This made Jiao Sheng, who was waiting below, miserable beyond words. When Jiao Sheng saw Ji Mo come down, he immediately became angry. 3,000 flames of anger rushed into his heart. Ji Mo, prepare to die. He rushed out after he finished speaking. Wait! Ji Mo roared. He stretched out his hand and gestured for him to stop. Jiao Sheng stopped and asked angrily, what are you doing? Why haven't you said start? Ji Mo said to the Master of Ceremonies with dissatisfaction, can't you see that young Master Jiao can't wait to be beaten up? Jiao Sheng's whole body suddenly trembled. Fine, Ji Mo, I will let you see who is the one who can't wait to be beaten up. The Master of Ceremonies had a strange look on his face. He finally raised his hand. The battle begins. The Master of Ceremonies hadn't even finished speaking when Jiao Sheng rushed over impatiently. He rushed in front of Ji Mo, and his fists blew the hair on Ji Mo's forehead into a mess. Wait! Ji Mo shouted like a thunderbolt. He stared at Jiao Sheng and stood motionless. Jiao Sheng was so angry that he had no choice but to stop. He gritted his teeth and said in anger, what do you want to do again? Ah! Who would have thought that Ji Mo would suddenly throw a punch at Jiao Sheng's face? Jiao Sheng's nose started to bleed crazily, and his face started to bleed. Jiao Sheng felt a sharp pain, and his tear glands were affected. He could not open his eyes, and tears flowed out of his eyes. Ji Mo laughed. I said, wait. I need to make the first move. He did not show any mercy and continued to punch Jiao Sheng 3 times, followed by 2 kicks. He took advantage of the opportunity when Jiao Sheng was covering his face with his hands. Jiao Sheng was sent flying like a sandbag. The noisy venue suddenly became silent. Everyone saw this scene, and their heads were in a knot. They could not react. Ji Mo caught up with Jiao Sheng at lightning speed. He then kicked Jiao Sheng's body in an awe-inspiring manner. Then, he proudly shouted, Humph! You *shoal. The Master of Ceremonies had said start, and you actually listened to me when I asked you to wait. Ah! Then why didn't you die when I asked you to? You *shoal. Gao Sheng rolled and crawled away. He was battered and exhausted. His whole body was in unbearable pain. He was so angry that his liver hurt. However, the gamblers in the stands finally understood. They started to curse. "Jimo, you are so shameless. You sneak attacked." Then, someone retorted, "Bullshit. What's a sneak attack? This is a duel." The master of ceremonies had said that the duel would start. Who can be blamed for Gao Sheng not being on guard? I can only say that his shoal. There's nothing else to say. Would you be an accountant if you were in my place? Absolutely not. What this guy said was pure bullshit. In such a situation, if one was caught off guard, there was an 80% chance that someone would fall for it. However, these words had successfully instigated a rebellion. "Gao Sheng, are you stupid? The duel has started. Are you still dreaming? Motherfucker, Jimo asked you to stop, and you stopped. Why are you so obedient? He's your opponent, not your father." "Ayo, my silver." Gao Sheng was so angry that blood rushed to his head. He quickly jumped up and wiped his face. His handsome face was covered with blood. He looked ferocious and terrifying. He roared and crazily rushed over. "Hold on!" Jimo shouted loudly. However, Gao Sheng didn't pay attention to him. He roared and rushed forward. However, he saw a sword light flash in front of his eyes. He felt pain on his body, and hastily retreated. He felt a piercing pain. He lowered his head to look, and couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. There was a sword mark on his chest. His flesh had been cut open, and his bones could almost be seen. You are despicable." Gao Sheng was so angry that he became muddle-headed. This bastard had actually pulled out his sword without making a sound. I was so angry that I didn't notice when he pulled out his sword. I said wait because I wanted to remind you, you haven't pulled out your sword yet. Jimo innocently shrugged his shoulders. Fuck, I was being kind. "Everyone, have you seen me?" I kindly reminded him to pull out his sword. Who in the three heavens doesn't know that I, Jimo, use a sword? He scolded me because of this. "Everyone, you can't be a good person. You have a good heart. But, you will be treated as a donkey's liver and lungs." Gao Sheng roared and spat out a mouthful of blood. "Jimo, you didn't make a sound when you pulled out your sword. It was clearly a deliberate sneak attack." The gamblers in the stands faintly felt that something was wrong. So, they immediately changed sides. "Yes, your sword didn't make a sound. It was clearly a premeditated sneak attack. Everyone, I'm being wrongly accused." Jimo turned around to let Gao Sheng see. You see, the entire three heavens knows that I use a sheathless sword." "Where did I get a sheath?" Thousands of people shouted at the same time. "Yes, Second Master Ji's sword doesn't have a sheath." These thousands of people were clearly supporting him. However, the crowd didn't understand. So, they turned to blame Gao Sheng. "You motherfucker, your opponent's sword doesn't have a sheath. You didn't know. You even got injured because of this." Gao Sheng was so angry that his vision turned black. "When did Jimo use a sheathless sword? How come I didn't know? This is clearly a lie." But, Jimo had already rushed over energetically. "Gao Sheng, don't say that I bullied you in front of all the heroes in the world. Come, let's have a fair fight. I won't take advantage of you." His words were so righteous that it inspired reverence. It attracted a round of applause. Gao Sheng's stomach twitched. He was so angry that he almost spat out another mouthful of blood. "You first broke my nose and caused my vision to blur. Then, you took the opportunity to beat me up. Then, you almost crippled my leg with a sneak attack. You made me so angry that I spat out blood. Now, you want to have a fair fight with me? You even said that you won't take advantage of me. How can you take advantage of me?" Gao Sheng was so angry that the muscles on his face were twitching. He suppressed his anger and pulled out his sword. He couldn't wait to chop Jimo into meat paste. Jimo shouted as he dodged. Good sword. So despicable. Damn, despicable, 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 despicable." He jumped around like a nimble monkey. Jiao Sheng shouted and increased the speed of his sword. He attacked Ji Mo like a storm. Ji Mo suddenly stopped talking. He seemed to be having a hard time fighting. In fact, he was having a hard time. Jiao Sheng's cultivation was a notch higher than his. Even though he was in a state of frenzy, he was still very powerful. Ji Mo was silent, and Jiao Sheng was proud of himself. You are only good with your mouth. How can you be my opponent when we fight? They fought in silence for a long time. Ji Mo was defending most of the time, while Jiao Sheng attacked. Ji Mo was about to be forced into a desperate situation. Jiao Sheng's sword net had already formed a dense net. Ji Mo suddenly screamed miserably. Aha! This scream was so sudden that the spectators were shocked. Their scalps went numb, and they felt a chill down their spines. Even Jiao Sheng was puzzled. Where did he get cut? He looked over. His sword slowed down, and Ji Mo used his sword to counterattack like a storm. As he attacked, he muttered, "Fuck, I almost got cut." Chapter 468. Jiao Sheng was furious. Knowing that he had fallen into a trap, he didn't say a word and attacked fiercely with his sword. Ji Mo's toes lightly touched the ground, and his body quickly retreated backwards. Jiao Sheng madly chased after him. Ji Mo suddenly used all the strength in his body to fly backwards, and widened the distance between them. Suddenly, he opened his eyes wide and looked behind Jiao Sheng. Then, he shouted with grief and indignation on his face, "Jiao Chong, don't tell me you want to bully me with numbers. This is in front of all the heroes of the world." Jiao Sheng was furious. He turned his head and shouted, "Who told you to come?" But he didn't find anyone behind him. Following that, the sharp sound of a golden blade slicing through the air behind him made him realize that he had been tricked. It was already too late for him to turn around, so he swung his sword backwards with all his might. At the same time, he twisted his body and flew backwards while maintaining a weird posture. Two clang sounds were heard. Jiao Sheng felt a strong force on his buttocks. Ji Mo had ferociously kicked his buttocks. And he was sent flying in the air. Jiao Sheng spat out blood in midair, not because he was beaten, but because he was angry. The pain in his body was far inferior to the grievance in his heart. Ji Mo didn't wait for him to get up. Instead, he flew over with his sword in his hand. He shouted loudly, "Jiao Sheng, stand up. Let's have a fair fight." Jiao Sheng turned over and stood up. He wanted to vomit blood in his heart. She had enough time to stand up, but when he shouted, it seemed like he was deliberately leaving time for her to stand up. However, by the time he stood up, Ji Mo had already arrived in the air with a sword light. Jiao Sheng stood on the ground. This time, it was his turn to defend. Ji Mo's sword light was like a tiger's. It carried a strong impact force. He didn't let his opponent off. His attacks were getting more and more intense. Jiao Sheng was already suffering from internal and external troubles. He was so sullen that he wanted to die. Now that he was being suppressed and beaten, his heart felt even more uncomfortable. They only defended frantically, trying their best to find any opportunity to counterattack. However, Ji Mo's attacks were like the Yangtze River, they were unceasingly flowing. Jiao Sheng had a thorough understanding of the Ji clan's sword techniques before the decisive battle. But he discovered that Ji Mo's sword techniques were often mixed with some strange sword techniques this time. Moreover, he had never seen these sword moves before, yet they were extraordinarily powerful. Every move he made left him in a sorry state. Dang 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 sounds kept ringing out. Jiao Sheng continuously retreated step by step. Ji Mo's figure continuously chased after him in the air. His imposing manner was very aggressive. Finally, his breath was exhausted. Jiao Sheng sensed that the opponent's offensive was about to come to an end. So, he gathered his strength and prepared to counterattack. However, he saw Ji Mo somersaulting backwards and flying far away. He shouted, "Don't say that I didn't give you fairness. Now, it's your turn to attack me." Jiao Sheng, who was about to attack, suddenly saw stars in front of his eyes. His body swayed a few times. "How shameless. If you didn't tell me, Do you think I wouldn't know how to attack? Someone in the stands shouted loudly, Second Master Ji. This is a decisive battle, Second Master Ji. Don't give him a chance to catch his breath. You're so benevolent and righteous, but they won't appreciate it. Hurry up and attack, Second Master Ji. This guy was the one who had been forced to bet against Ji Mo by Luo Ku Di's sword. He couldn't help but shout when he saw that victory was in sight. His face was full of resentment. At such a crucial moment, he actually let his opponent attack. Ayaya, my Second Master Ji, he is your opponent in the final battle. Why are you still so particular about your demeanor? This guy couldn't wait to rush down and fight on behalf of Ji Mo. My silver is about to fall into my hands. He couldn't imagine that Ji Mo looked confident and at ease. But he didn't have the strength to attack. If he continued to attack, he would have been counterattacked by his opponent. And that would have been disastrous. Second Master Ji is so benevolent and righteous. Many people praised him. Especially when he was compared to Jiao Sheng, Second Master Ji appeared even more heroic and straightforward. Jiao Sheng had already suffered internal injuries. Moreover, he had been angered to the point of muddle-headedness. Then, he had been hit repeatedly. He had suffered a lot of punches and kicks. So, his internal organs had been severely shaken. The sword wound on his thigh was still bleeding. He heard that such a despicable person had used such a shameless method, and had won the reputation of being benevolent and righteous. So, he couldn't help but roar, "You're talking nonsense. You're all talking nonsense." He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood as soon as these words came out of his mouth. His vision became blurry as he spat out this mouthful of blood. His body was on the verge of collapse. Jiao Sheng lost. Yu looked at the field and pondered. He had seen Ji Mo's method clearly. But he didn't laugh. Instead, he was pondering. This method is very powerful. Without shedding a drop of blood. Yu looked at Chu Yang. It's your doing, right? Chu Yang laughed and said, half of it. Jiao Sheng can be considered a rising star. His composure can be considered good. But he was angered to the point of insanity. If it had been someone else, they would have died from anger before they could even make a move. Yu sighed, it's not a brilliant plan. But it's extremely effective. Chu Yang smiled and said, of course, the most important factor is Ji Mo himself. Yu was startled. Then, he laughed, yes. This plan would have been useless against Ji Mo if he wasn't so thick-skinned. Mo Qingwu giggled, brother Ji Mo's skin has always been the thickest. Yu's face turned serious as he said, you're wrong. Your brother Chu Yang's skin is 100 times thicker than your brother Ji Mo's. 1,000 times. Mo Qingwu pouted unhappily. She looked at Yu and snorted, but you still snatched my brother Chu Yang's things. Your skin is 1,000 times thicker than brother Chu Yang's. No, it's 10,000 times thicker. Yu pretended not to hear. He glared at the scene and ignored her. His face didn't change at all. He was indeed thick-skinned. On the scene, Jiao Sheng was gasping for breath. He felt that the world was spinning. He couldn't suppress his internal injuries any longer. He heard Ji Mo shout from the opposite side, are you coming or not? Are you coming or not? I'm giving you a chance. I'll count to 3. If you don't come, I'll go over. 1, 2, 3. I'm going over. I'm going over to hit you. I'm really going over to hit you. Fuck, make a sound. Do you really want me to go over? Jiao Sheng screamed and spat out a mouthful of blood. He didn't wait for Ji Mo to really come over. Then, he fainted. His body went soft, and he fell to the ground with a shua sound. He was unconscious. Ji Mo was startled. He looked at young Master Jiao who had fallen to the ground. He thought, is this a trick? Therefore, he continued to shout, get up. Get up. Second Master Ji is straightforward and upright. He is benevolent and righteous. He has noble character and unquestionable integrity. He has never attacked an enemy who has fallen to the ground. Get up. Get up. However, Jiao Sheng couldn't stand up no matter how much he shouted. Moreover, he couldn't hear him. Fortunately, he couldn't hear him. Otherwise, he would have fainted again. Did he really faint? Gmo cautiously approached him and kicked him with the tip of his foot. But Gao Sheng didn't respond. Fuck, he really fainted. He really fainted. He really fainted. Fuck. Gmo kicked him a few times. But he didn't get any response. So, he was finally sure that he had fainted. He couldn't help but touch his head. He was puzzled. I didn't hit you much. How did you faint? He stood there and pondered for a while. Then, he turned his head and said to the Master of Ceremonies, I seem to have one, right? Master of Ceremonies, does this count as my win? Gmo was somewhat uncertain. He didn't fight back when I hit him. You won. The Master of Ceremonies was speechless as he replied. Well, you've also won here. Then, why don't you quickly announce that I've won? Gmo glared at him and said, You're the Master of Ceremonies. But you're somewhat slow. Why are you still standing there and dreaming? The Master of Ceremonies was so angry that he almost fainted. He hastily retreated a few steps. He calmed down and adjusted his breathing. Then, he shouted, the final battle. Gmo wins. He didn't need to say it. Everyone knew it. That was because the audience was already in chaos. The sky had been turned upside down. Many people were wailing and crying. The money that they had accumulated through years of hard work had gone down the drain. This group of people had basically bet all their assets. Even if they still had pocket money on hand, they didn't have much left. Gao Sheng's defeat was equivalent to these people losing their entire fortune. Many people started to curse, he's a piece of trash. He's so much older than his opponent. And, he's a level higher than him. But, he's not his opponent. Goddamn Gao Sheng. He's making us lose money. These people had bet most of their fortune. But, they still had some savings. But, they were extremely angry in their hearts. Many people were crazily laughing. He won. He won. Fuck. He won. I didn't expect. These people had bet on Gmo. Some people were remorseful. Motherfucker. I would have bet more if I had known this earlier. I would have bet even with a high interest rate. I would have bet as much as I could. Motherfucker. These people were greedy and insatiable. The happiest person was obviously that fat man who had been forced by Luo Kudai to bet on Gmo. He was dancing with joy at this moment. In fact, he didn't even know what his surname was. This is a great help. It's no wonder that fortune teller said that my life is good. I had already lost money. But, someone pointed a sword at me. And, I won. What is this if not good life? Of course, the most miserable person was undoubtedly young Master Mo Tianyun. Young Master Mo had also fainted the moment Gao Sheng had fainted. He hadn't woken up yet. Perhaps, he would rather not wake up. After all, he would have had to face billions of debts if he woke up. What about the people of Gao clan? Gmo finally remembered something important. Take out the marriage contract. Tear it up. Your marriage contract doesn't exist from now on. Only our love will exist. Everyone felt like vomiting. Gao Meng of Gao clan took out the marriage contract and handed it over to Gmo in front of everyone. Then, he led his men to carry Gao Sheng out. Gao Sheng had already woken up. But, he was so angry that his heart hurt. Moreover, he was extremely ashamed. So, he pretended to be unconscious as he was carried out. Gmo tore the marriage contract to shreds. He raised his hands, and they turned into white butterflies. He then jumped up with a awu sound. I won. I won. Awu tilde 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 you're my wife. Awu tilde tilde tilde. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.